So I say most people believe there is something dramatically wrong in this country. They're not sure what it is.
Got your labor next to soul, interest slave in endless hole. It's so deep you'll never leave, a text on key with no reprieve. Interest banking, future sold, paper money, fuck the gold. Print more money, there's no end, new interest rates thanks to the Fed. Inflation's up, we can't afford to import, source an endless hoard. Funding all this endless war, these the whores I must ignore. Feeling good, yeah that's my price. The system lets me have my vice. Bread and circus feels nice, feeling bad, take this advice. Just take this pill, watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill, watch some porn, drain your vril. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. Never thought that this would happen, should've prepped instead of fapping. Tires screeching, people scream, living nightmare, not a dream. There goes all my dopamine, wiping off my jerk-off cream. I'm flabby, weak and unprepared to own a gun, I'm really scared. Water filters, batteries, cans of food and MREs. I really should've bought that shit before the social fabric ripped. Atomize, I'm all alone, no internet, can't scroll my phone. The lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. Came on, I can't believe, breathe a sigh of great relief. Boy, I love modernity, endless goon sesh never leave. If you're sad, just take this pill. Watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill. Watch some porn, join your grill. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out.
Live from an undisclosed location, deep beneath a granite mountain, I am your host, Capitalisimo. This is Library of Mass Destruction. Joining me, as per usual, is Mr. Christopher Sandbatch. How are you doing today, sir?
Which one of the conservative talk hosts used some version of that as his intro? It was Rush Limbaugh, wasn't it?
Was it?
I think it was. Like, yeah, Rush Limbaugh's
was he live from a man-made cave under Cheyenne Mountain?
It was like something about being in a bunker in an undisclosed location. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I've literally never watched Limbaugh.
Well, he was not very watchable, but like I had because my first car that I drove was a '97 Jeep Wrangler. And when the CD player only had one CD in it, it was Bob Dylan's Nashville Skyline. So like I was frequently listening to the radio because I couldn't get the CD out. And so I would frequently listen to the radio and had like 3 years. And this was like peak talk radio listening, like early Obama years, where I would just be driving around and I would listen to Rush Limbaugh. And then at night I would listen to Art Bell.
I
wonder what kind of shit that did to me.
Alex Jones, or maybe Coast to Coast. Yeah.
It was definitely it was definitely Rush Limbaugh.
That's what Randall Shirker said in chat. So
yeah. But the way Limbaugh's talking points was wow, that's fun. You know, I only know Limbaugh's talking points from the way the TRS guys made fun of them. Yeah, that was the original TRS concept. I think was Opie and Anthony. It was racist Opie and Anthony. I was on the racist version of the firing line that on the network. That was the show that I did. But I also want to warn everybody that there's something weird going on with my internet router. And like I spent like an hour trying to fix it, and like, and by fix it I mean turn it off, turn it back on. And I eventually got frustrated, and I told Capitalisimo, I was like, I'm gonna go put this thing in the freezer and see if that works. And putting it in the freezer worked, which first of all is not a good sign, because it means I have no idea what actually is wrong with it. But
really terrifying.
If I disappear, he might have to just read for 10 minutes while I go put it back in the freezer and restart.
Read for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
How will people ever handle it if I'm just reading to them? It'll be exactly like normal.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So, have there been any interesting developments in the world of conspiracies in this week? There was a very well attended vigil for Mr. Charles Kirk. And it was so well attended and so well produced that some people are saying that it was planned long before his death. Other people have said that based on the way that everyone was shouting out Erica Kirk as a leader in the TPUSA movement, that Kay Bono perhaps she set it all up to take over because clearly she's going to be better off without a husband or something like that, because people are brain damaged by Cape shit plot lines, basically.
Yeah, they totally are. The Daytona Kirk 500 went off well.
That all of the conspiracy theory, unfortunately, all of the conspiracy theories right now seem to be a rather lowbrow kind of quality. And maybe I'll eat those words in the future, but I don't know. Right.
No, exactly. And it's sort of interesting because this is our pre-show banter, but this is literally what our show is about. So we're like actually burning our materials. This stuff might just come out over and over and over and over and over again today, because like, wow, look at what we're talking about. We're talking about JFK assassination. So like, we're probably going to be, it's sort of interesting to do this show tonight because we have like the book, and then we have like, there are not many times when you have a live ongoing political assassination spectacle that you can draw comparisons to. So it's,
that's true. I mean, and Kay Bono,
we're like John West. We're like
maybe
Dr.
it was us.
Yeah.
Maybe it was us. Maybe we set it up. We brought this into the world.
We're like Dr. Jolyon West, who didn't have to go create his own serial killer in Los Angeles to study serial killers right now. It's a rare moment. But I would like to point, with respect to what you're talking about with the low grade of conspiracy theories, Randall Shirker here says, I'm still not convinced intelligence assets weren't involved in the shooter's Discord. We're at a level of conspiracy theory with respect. We're at a level of conspiracy hive brain with this. That looks like the Dom Perignon of conspiracy theories surrounding the Charlie Kirk incident now.
Yeah,
like that looks like the FDR like smoking a cigarette and drinking a glass of port in black tie at like some White House event version of the level of holy fucking shit conspiracy theory that's going on. I mean, I'm not even going to apologize for using the phrase conspiracy theory. Most people have to like pause and do 2 minutes where they explain that they're not going to, I'm not going to do conspiracy theory. I'm totally going to do conspiracy theory. And that's what all of that shit is. But well, go ahead. You had something. I don't want to get too much into shit that I'm going to just repeat over and over. Because like I said, I'm going to be more depressing tonight, and probably.
I mean, the thing is that the thing is that there is a sense in which, in a very highly distributed way, right? Of course, yes, intelligence assets were involved. Like, were they directing it and guiding it in a at a level of granular planning and exit routes and things like that? I find that a bit dubious. but you know, where are trannies? Where do trannies come from?
Right.
It's a you know, it's I mean, that is a distributed mimetic attack. In my opinion, that is the latter day consequence of MK Ultra technology, which is of course what has been used to manage the spectacle in our postmodern day.
Right. And you know, like point, because again, like I said, and actually to answer your question, you asked me, why are you going to get theoretical tonight? There's another thing that's going on, which is
that's my voice. That's your
yeah.
That's your impression of me.
I've listened to you try Southern accents so many different ways. Yeah, but the one of the other things that happened is that Monsieur common Twitter poster, Monsieur Le Baron, did a wonderful thread about sort of outside ideological influence. Well, not really about, but he touched on outside ideological influence. And there's enough shit going on that I decided that it's probably time for me to stop talking about my thesis was about this and actually just go ahead and rework it into a book that I can give y'all. And that's the book y'all really want from me. So I've been working that material back up, and it's very theory heavy. And I've discovered that quite a bit of it is actually relevant here. So like, yeah, when you're talking about connections, how are the spectacle and MK Ultra,
how are spectacle formed?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what is the purpose of them? And so I've been into quite a bit of that theory in the last couple of days.
Into Debordian, you know, the theory.
Not much Debord actually, but like, you know, there are a couple of different. I think we talked about this before. There are a couple of different convergent theses. The one that I work out of the most is usually it's the Frankfurt School, of the leftist frameworks that all tend to converge on. The same set of parapolitical ideas. The one that I'm most familiar with and the one that I'm most comfortable in is actually the tradition of the Frankfurt School. So that's and when I say tradition of the Frankfurt School, I mean dialectically. So like the Frankfurt School and the people that they're arguing with. Gabe says, I read T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland in public and no woman offered me sex. You know, I was told that tweet was Indian coded, and I regret making it. But you did, in fact, choose the one book on that list that was like iffy. You had to have an extra something else to pull that one off, Gabe.
Gabe says he demands a refund, which shows you how Indian he is, because he's trying to redeem.
I didn't offer you anything. What do you want? You want sex from me, Gabe? Is that what you want?
Whoa! This is taking a dark turn. This is taking a dark turn.
This is when the hunted becomes the hunter.
God, the eroticos preditore has been fully taken back by Gabe. All right. So we will continue our read. So we're going to get into a bit of a list of ships, and I'm going to add another frigate that was later upgraded to a full carrier group to this, because it seems that Mr. Wilson has forgotten to ask somebody. I actually realized that we have already touched upon this other individual. I'll spoil it right now. It's George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush, the president of these United States, before William Jefferson Clinton. All right. Hold on.
That particular fold of the JFK conspiracy, I don't know how often that. Yeah, it is a glaring omission. First of all, when you first told me about this, I thought you were talking about George W. Bush.
What about him?
And when you first told me when you first started doing the Bush things, I inevitably imagined George W. Bush. So I did.
Oh, really?
I just had to. I had to go back.
The lesser son.
I had to go back and reform my mental model of what we're talking about with the older one in there.
So there's so the thing is that so if you remember the Zapata project, right, which was to train Cuban dissidents to overthrow Castro, right?
Yeah.
So they were part of that project, and its namesake was because George H.W. Bush owned Zapata Petroleum, which ran several offshore oil rigs upon which those exact dissidents were trained and launched from.
Yeah.
And which served as supply depots on the eventual Bay of Pigs invasion. The year after, we'll get into it a little more. But he was a businessman, basically operating a CIA cutout.
Oh, no, it's so difficult to believe. Would you say George W. Bush built actual outer heaven? Yeah, something like that.
He built actual out. Yes, that's right. That's right.
This is one of those
weapon to surpass Metal Gear.
Yeah, this is one of those sections, one of these book sections that promises to be so juicy. We're just like dancing around the rim of it. We may as well get started.
Yes, like the salt on a frozen margarita.
On a frozen margarita at Applebee's at 5 p.m. in Daytona.
And that margarita's name was Jolly on West. Oh, all right. Let's see. The notion of Kennedy as the first presidential defector from the Cold War seems to have established itself as the grand narrative of conspiracy theory. JFK is the martyred hero of noble failure. He's almost a libertarian. I tend to refer to this theory as the Garrison thesis, as it formed the basis of Jim Garrison's own formal explanation for the political murder, an act which, like every other form of homicide, legally requires a motive, mens rea, in addition to the act, actus reus.
Actus reus. I was just like, it's real quick. Is this Garrison that he's quoting here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So do it, and then I'll go into who exactly Jim Garrison is.
This decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Vietnam by the end of 1965, on top of the new anti-intervention Cuba policy, added up to nothing less than a fundamental break with Cold War foreign policy, which had been the lifeblood of the CIA. Here, it seemed to me, was a plausible motive for the assassination. Though my thinking at this stage was not very well developed, at least I could see that the CIA's vested interest, as well as its ideological commitment, were to the continuation of the Cold War. Along the way, President Kennedy had made implacable enemies, from top-level CIA Cold Warriors like Allen Dulles and Richard Helms, then deputy director in charge of covert ops, down to anti-Castro Cuban exiles who felt betrayed at the Bay of Pigs.
All right.
Who's Jim Garrison?
So Jim Garrison is a legendary figure in the lore of the city of New Orleans. Yeah, and in a city that has probably more lore per square inch than any other place in the Western Hemisphere. Jim Garrison is a singular example of that city's like sort of self-conception. He is a white dude, okay? He grew up uptown, became a lawyer, gets into public service, and he does, if I remember this properly, he is he's an anti-organized crime, like go-getter, okay? This happens to be at a time when New Orleans is functionally run by a wing of the Italian mob under the aegis of small time, whatever, of a small time mob boss by the name of Carlos Marcello, okay, who was just a Sicilian that ends up.
Whoa! Let's not diminish the contributions.
Yeah, Sicilian Americans, you know, but he's just a regular everyday Sicilian who like actually his mob connections and his U.S. military connections go way back to the point where he was like even while still involved in even while already involved in what we now know to be mob activities, he was colluding with the OSS and was actually one of the OSS infiltrators that was sent into occupied Italy to prepare the way for the American invasion of Italy in 1943. Okay, so he glows. He's not only a mobster, but he glows to high heaven. Okay, and he, after the war, he comes back to New Orleans and he's allowed to the feds more or less allow him to run New Orleans with an iron fist. And in a fascinating turn of events, this turns out to be the era during which New Orleans is generally considered to be at its peak. So it had its peak population, its lowest crime ever. Like whenever it was generally a better place to live than it ever had been at any other time in its history. But there is this fact that it is run by a mobster who is also functionally acting as the CIA's forward command post for their operations in the Gulf of Mexico. And so this is why there are so many swirling incidents, because he's like not only a mobster, but he's also entangled he's also entangled with like the civilian air patrol and the CIA and the auctioneer system of hospitals. He's colluding with people who at the time they were writing for like the American Mercury and are generally considered to be quote unquote right-wing cranks. Okay, to give you Alton Auctioner was one of his collaborators. Alton Auctioner was, he was a surgeon. He was a guy that he was the first guy that really came out against anti-smoking, came out in favor of anti-smoking. But he was also running he was at Tulane University. He was also running a primate research lab where they were doing early virology studies. Okay. And because, we didn't know much about viruses in the 1950s. It's easy to remember, so we don't know much about viruses in the 1950s. This is the Tulane primate research lab, by the way, that Theo Von talks about sometimes.
The worst thing you could get back in those days was the herp.
Well, no. Okay. So like the early, in addition to being anti-smoking, Auctioner was also one of the very early massively pro-vaccine guys. And at the Tulane primate research facility, they were doing these virology research, and it was instrumental in developing the first producing the first batches of the polio vaccine, which the time
the tainted ones.
Yes, the tainted ones. And at the time they weren't aware of this, but because virology was in its infancy, they didn't realize how small viruses could be. And they grew the first batch of the polio virus on monkey serum that was contaminated with a virus that was too small for them to see. It was simian virus, either simian virus 17 or 40, which has the unfortunate side effect of when you're inoculated with it, it produces an 80% likelihood of developing soft tissue cell cancer at some point in their life. So there's all this going on. Enter Jim Garrison, he frames himself as this kind of public reformer, and he wins a couple of federal cases and uses them he catapults to the city attorney's office in New Orleans on this anti-organized crime, clean up the city program. And he is crazy. If you've seen and I don't mean crazy like monomaniacally obsessed, like crazy as in possibly a schizophrenic. And
is it actually possessed by the Loa?
Yeah. Like he's nuts. He's nuts in like a Ignatius J. Reilly, Christopher Sandbatch way that only white people from this city turn out to be. Okay, and he is
both of the other examples you mentioned are technically fictional.
That's true. Yeah. And it's interesting that the Garrison stuff is happening at the same time John Kennedy Toole is going crazy in New Orleans, by the way. So like this is all of this stuff. Like, so you could almost imagine like an Ignatius J. Reilly character who is like who has gotten a B in his body.
Was Garrison a yat?
No, he's an Anglo. Yeah, he's
Sad.
again. Yeah, well, I mean, who am I? You know, so is John Kennedy Toole. Well,
Sad.
Kennedy Toole was Irish, but the thing to remember going forward is that Jim Garrison, even at the very point where he's the only person who ever brings a criminal suit against, what is it? He names everyone in the federal government up to Lyndon Johnson. So like you can never forget that what Jim Garrison actually is at base is a crazy person who is like literally converting
who filed a lawsuit as the city attorney of New Orleans against a bunch of co-conspirators in the JFK assassination, and the city of New Orleans sued the federal government to uncover the truth of the JFK assassination.
Right. But
yes.
the other thing, the thing, when you're imagining this, you have to imagine a man that has converted more or less the entire resources of the entire tax income of the city of New Orleans into prosecuting this case. And he doesn't have any evidence. The only thing he's able to come up with is a connection between this homosexual, a number of homosexuals that were operating in collusion with the CIA to do some stuff for
the more things change, huh?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's
basically Project Veritas.
Yeah, it's that. It's such a city of New Orleans story, but it's like the thing to remember is that like when you think of New Orleans as a shithole today, it is because this guy, this crazy dude who has this monomaniacal like mission against the mob in his own city, that has converted all of the civic resources of this like ancient American polity to pursuing his like crusade to put people in jail. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of reasons to believe that Garrison he's not being cynical here. Like he's a nut. Okay. He's a brilliant nut, but he's a nut. And so like anytime he starts talking, anytime Jim Garrison is actually quoted, and also with David Ferree, all of these people that are involved in this
noted homosexual.
Yeah, and the
only gay ever portrayed by noted Italian
Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah. But you have to remember that all of these people that are associated with the New Orleans branch of the CIA, they're all nuts. Everyone is nuts. The people who are opposing them are nuts, and they're frequently brilliant nuts, but they're nuts. And like it's like reading a Nabokov novel. Everyone is entirely unreliable all the time.
Very good. All right. As is well known, the Garrison thesis provided the parapolitical narrative spine of Oliver Stone's film spectacle JFK. It also, for all intrinsic purposes, forms the argumentative core of James W. Douglas's magisterial JFK and the Unspeakable, why he died and why he mattered. Well, he was the president. The main problem with JFK Dallas as a presumption of détente, as engineered by JCS and its subordinates within the military intelligence complex, is that, once again, it fails to adequately account for the spectacular power invoked. If terminating the back channel itself was the motive, then the murder would have been better handled far more covertly, as an inside job performed in secret. But if I apply a priori reasoning and work axiomatically from Dealey Plaza as Debordian spectacle, then it becomes obvious that the parapolitical objective of JFK Dallas could not have been merely negative in its nature. That is, the derailment of Détente 1, but must necessarily have been positive, which required the presence of the theater of the false flag. And this could only have been the psychopolitical inducement for the military invasion of Cuba. Even if I hypothesize that the implication of Castro in the death of JFK was the means selected by Lemnitzer et al. To create the strategy of tension necessary to undermine U.S.-Soviet rapprochement, I am still left with the task of having to explain the not inconsiderable residue of the centrality of Cuba to the successful staging of the clandestine spectacle. Also, we should note once again, as we did in our last episode, that if this is the explanation, then the JFK assassination was a failure. It was an operational success, but a failure in its goals.
Right, which is like it calls. First of all, there's if you go back one page, and then so I can reference the text. Yeah. One page. Like, was that it?
That's one page.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So what we have here, this sentence here, this is when you're reading fucking academic tripe, you have to be really careful. Wendy did this occasionally, but she didn't do it very much.
When Dog wrote for the people.
Yeah. Mr. Wilson here has done a big Marxist faux pas here.
Which is why sometimes I will read 2 pages and then condense it into 2 sentences. Yeah.
But he's done a big Marxist faux pas here, but he's done it kind of sneakily. And if you're not aware of the way these people operate, it might not be it. So what he's done here, okay, so the preemption of detente 1, if terminating the back channel, okay, so yeah, it would have been an inside job. But if I apply a priori reasoning, whenever you're talking about history, means what it actually means is I'm going to go ahead and ignore all of the implications of my primary sources, and I'm going to assume a lot of things are already true.
Let's just assume I'm right, and then if I'm right, what does it look like?
Right, and if I'm right, what it looks like is, wow, my theory looks perfect, and I'm like, well, okay, this is perfect definition of overfitting the model. What he's done is created the situations where no theory except his can be true, and then he's declared that it's true. Okay.
I do however, the argument could be made that he forgot to attach the GigaChat image.
Yeah, he forgot to, but then he does give us this bit.
What's the evidence that this is how it went down? Well, it was revealed to me in a dream.
Yeah, I mean, Columbo voice. I'm still left with this task of having to explain to not inconsiderable resident of the centrality of Cuba to the successful staging of the clandestine spectacle. So, like, what they're saying is
one more thing.
The only thing I can't explain is this Cuba shit. So we got to get that out of the way. Okay. And
so,
Lansdale coming up here, by the way, is a guy that I don't know much about. So we're going to shoot
Section B, the big boys. Edward G. Lansdale, Air Force General and former advertising executive. Lansdale was director of Operation Mongoose. It's funny that he's a former advertising executive. Like, he was an executive first, and then he became a general. It seems so,
Let's Jamie pull that up.
The formal operations branch of the Cuba Project, initiated by the Eisenhower administration and formally discontinued by JFK following the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962. Although Lansdale's real-world record of self-promotion and borderline incompetence largely fails to substantiate his far more spectacular one as an omniscient dealer of covert death, the footnote here is, see the discussion of Oliver Stone's JFK in Chapter 5. In the estimation of CIA officer Sam Halpern, Lansdale was a con man, absolutely perfect. He's the man in the gray flannel suit from Madison Avenue in New York. I think he could sell refrigerators to Eskimos or the Brooklyn Bridge to people who don't have cars. I bet you he could sell that too. He was very good. You got to give him credit for that. Lansdale constitutes a usual suspect through his connection to Mongoose, a vast umbrella organization that provided clandestine cover to virtually all of the other suspects.
I'm reading his Wikipedia right now, and usual suspect is putting it like this. I mean, of course, we're talking about the JFK conspiracy, but if you knew nothing about the purpose of this book, and I read this guy's bio too, you'd be like, I'll bet he had something to do with the JFK shit. But his Wikipedia does not detail that advertising career at all. It just says he went and did some advertising shit, and then he went into the OSS.
So Randall Shurker has said, oh, the guy who false flagged a vampire attack on the Philippines.
Yes, he did that. He did that.
Yeah. So interesting.
And
In the
was part of it.
1950s, the CIA was
part of the Phoenix program.
Was fighting a communist guerrilla movement in the Philippines. They spread rumors that evil men would be attacked by the Aswang as part of psychological warfare. They punched holes in a dead body and drained it of blood for others to find.
Beautiful.
Also the Phoenix program. Yes. Amazing. Amazing. I kind of like this guy. It's a real applied Eddie Bernays. Right.
I mean, he's from Los Angeles and he went to UCLA too. So yeah,
obviously a student, right?
Yeah.
On November 4th, 1961, following the Bay of Pigs, a special meeting between RFK, the elder, and CIA Deputy Director of Plans Richard M. Bissell took place. Consistent with JFK's now strengthened aversion to military intervention, both agreed that large-scale sabotage actions would be carried out by both CIA-controlled assets and independent Cuban groups as quickly as possible. This meeting signals the Kennedy administration's choice of covert paramilitary and insurgency operations as the prescribed norm of the Cuba project. In the words of RFK, "My idea is to stir things up on the island with espionage, sabotage, general disorder, run and operated by Cubans themselves, with every group but Batistates and communists. The beauty of such an operation over the next few months," wrote White House aide Richard Godwin in a memo to JFK, "is that we cannot lose. If the best happens, we will unseat Castro. If not, then at least we will emerge with a stronger underground, better propaganda, and far clearer idea of the dimensions of the problems which affect us."
Incredible.
Yeah, funding and insurgency definitely can't have any negative repercussions. Yeah. In December 1961, Allen Dulles was removed as director of the CIA for his role in the Bay of Pigs and was replaced by John McCone, who appointed Richard Helms as the new head of Cuban affairs. Helms then replaced the disgraced Richard Bissell as deputy director for plans several weeks later. Helms split Cuban affairs off from the rest of the Western Hemisphere branch. And in February 1962, William Harvey took over Task Force W, the new CIA office charged with Cuba. It was during this pivotal transition towards new personnel committed to covert as opposed to military action that RFK formally established Operation Mongoose, a generic term for a loose network of anti-Castro proxies and paramilitary forces. Mongoose was nominally under the direction of General Lansdale, but the real decision-making power lay with the Special Augmented Group, SGA, whom Lansdale reported to, which was supervised by RFK and included the heads of all of the branches of the armed forces, most notably the new chiefs of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Maxwell Taylor, the author of Flexible Response.
Beautiful name, Maxwell Taylor. I love Lansdale Taylor. I love this.
Taylor.
This is our high water mark, though. This is the end of it. This is
the end. It's all downhill. It's all downhill from here, fellas.
This is all this shit is the moment with like the WASP America that you like that Lana Del Rey insists was real. This is the moment it flips over and starts declining.
It's the what is it? The Hunter Thompson's high water mark where the wave finally broke.
Yeah.
As would be except in the exact opposite of what he was talking about, of course. Randall Shirker, I am ready for sledding downhill. We are on a toboggan ride to hell. That is right. Sex Freakman popped into chat, says, "Sorry I'm late, lads. Caught a bad case of the woke mind virus, one of God's strongest
many
chatters."
such cases.
Yeah, one of the God's strongest chatterbaiters, that one. As would be expected, Operation Mongoose focused on utilizing a Cuban and Cuban exile political base opposed to Castro, infiltrating the island and instigating sabotage in order to spark the overthrow of the regime by internal revolt. It is a shame that there wasn't some sort of clandestine group called Cobra that Operation Mongoose was meant to counteract. It would have been great. It would have been very, very thematic, right? Consistent theming in geopolitics is very important. On August 7th, 1962, CIA liaison Harvey drafted the official covert activities mission for the operation. Exert all possible diplomatic, economic, psychological, and other pressures to overthrow the Castro communist regime without overt U.S. military commitment.
See, I can't help but stop, and because I'm thinking about this as the peak of WASP America.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes this such a spectacular spectacle is that the declassification of events reads like good literature. So, like, remember, you also have to remember these are the most literate people that have ever existed in the unit. Like, these are all Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they go home and bang their wives, get shithouse on benzos and like tiki cocktails, and then they write.
They were on Quaaludes.
And write poetry. So like even these guys' internal memos reads like beautiful literature compared to everything we see today. So like read that. Exert all possible diplomatic, economic, psychological, and other pressures. What a beautifully chosen word. To overthrow the Castro communist regime without overt U.S. military commitment, not entanglement, commitment. That is a beautiful sentence. It, like, the semantics of it tell you everything that this man wanted to convey.
It didn't take him 2 pages to say that.
Right, exactly. That's beautiful. It's beautiful writing.
Yeah. Although Mongoose clearly anticipated eventual U.S. military intervention, the prevailing assumption throughout was that such an invasion would only take place in response to a wholly indigenous uprising against Castro. He put indigenous in scare quotes, apparently.
It's probably
because he's a bit of a libtard. No,
well, he's a libtard, but he's also probably directly quoting. He's directly quoting.
Possibly, he's probably taking that exact word. Yeah. This under the blanket of plausible deniability. Mongoose provides the needed context to JFK's rebuff to Lemnitzer over Northwoods on March 16th, 1962. However, it also renders painfully obvious the operation's fatal flaw under RFK's tenure, the Cuba Project, while officially favoring the clandestine, was in fact always implicitly slanted towards military force, replicating perfectly the underlying parapolitical dynamics that undermined the earlier Zapata plan. Which, remember, George H.W. Bush, ran, had an oil company that had that name, and that specific name.
It's like, again, such an obvious carve out. These are the things that the phrase carve out was coined to describe.
Yeah, that's right. So, at all times, primary operational control lay with the Defense Department. Mongoose was masterminded by the Pentagon. The Joint Chiefs were motivated by the desire to prevent Castro from spreading communism elsewhere in Latin America. For them, time was of the essence. The alarming element at work here was the Pentagon's concern with the buildup of Russian nuclear forces. Military planners for the Joint Chiefs of Staff had openly stated that the optimal time for any hypothetical preemptive nuclear attack against the Soviet Union would be by the end of 1963.
And again, these are these beautiful, and sometimes whenever I stream with Prude, I'll go make some of these like time series tables that these guys are looking at. I mean, if you go look in the documents, they have their typewritten documents, and they have these beautiful like cumulative probability function like graphics in them that I don't know how they got in typewritten pages, but there's these these people. This is after the gamification of everything, and something I said on Twitter yesterday that really gave me shit for was it was like something I said in a Telegram group was like, actually don't think philosophy is very interesting at all between Heraclitus and the Turing machine. We have the Turing machine now, and so everything has become gamified. And so like we're always dealing, so like at all times here what these people are juggling is a series of converging timetables where they're saying like by 1963, like, you know, Russian infrastructure will build up in, you know, along along the coastline in Irkutsk is going to be sufficiently able to like counteract a clandestine force landed in the middle of the night to disrupt their nuclear launch capabilities. By 1963, they'll be able to catch us. So we have until 1963 to nuke them, or our shit won't work. You know, and they're constantly managing these converging, crashing, like there's hundreds of these timetables, and like the day-to-day work of the CIA, because they have the Turing machine, but they don't have GPUs. So the day-to-day work of the CIA is like looking at all of these probability clouds and all of these timetables for all of these things, and then determining what operations they have at their disposal to particular issues. So it's all a method of triage. So there's like underneath these decisions that are being made, there are hundreds of people in offices doing by manual calculation the shit that we now use machine learning algorithms for. And I'm priming you there with that a little bit because I always like to go back to MK Ultra and, you know, the concept of Markov decision spaces and the technology that powers LLMs. Because to me,
I have one thing I want to be a pedant about.
Yeah.
You mentioned coastal landing in Irkutsk, but Irkutsk is the city on Lake Baikal.
Okay,
which is a lake.
I would love to see
landing.
Yeah,
landing on Lake Baikal would
I'm not a Russia expert. I am just a Russia fan. Okay, and so like this is
Russia
like
appreciators.
Yeah, I'm a Russia appreciator. Oswald Art says I don't look at Sandbatch's Twitter account. Fuck you, Oswald Art. And Sex Freakman says you thought you were a word cell. Turns out you're an exile. No, this is an interesting thing about me. I am a shape rotator. Okay, I am a shape rotator that was like jettisoned from my path in life and landed in the pandemonium of word celldom and decided that you people could use some instruction, and that's how I got here. That's my sheep dip backstory.
Yeah, excellent. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh yeah. At all times, the primary operational control lay with the Defense Department. Mongoose was mastermind. Oh, I already read this, didn't I? Yep. Would be
I interrupted you in the middle of a paragraph.
Yes. Accordingly, the March 14th, 1962 guidelines for Mongoose, drafted by General Maxwell Taylor and approved by the SGA, clearly stated that although the U.S. will make maximum use of indigenous resources, final success will require decisive U.S. military intervention. Therefore, domestic anti-Castro forces were to prepare and justify this intervention, and thereafter to facilitate and support it. Prompting Sam Hurwitz, the State Department liaison to Mongoose, to argue that the concentration of attention upon the employment of U.S. military force against Cuba runs counter to the basic concept of Mongoose, which is to bring down the Castro regime from within. The parapolitical dilemma of Zapata had not been resolved by Mongoose precisely because of the fractured nature of the dual state. And as before, the centerpiece of Civil War II was Cuba, the Central Intelligence Agency.
No, that's like our Dramatis Personae has just introduced an institutional actor of limitless. This is literally the Frankenstein narrative here. This is where we introduce the monster.
yes, yeah, but we've used an abnormal brain. Whose brain did you use? Someone. Abnormal.
No, for you people talking about Excel, I am not an Excel bro. Have I ever talked about this? I build knowledge graphs is what I do, which is like it's Excel beyond your wildest imagination in short.
Yes. All right. Long the favorite of conspiracy scholars who prefer a domestic origin of JFK Dallas, what I call the enemy from within school, this group of suspects is the most difficult to discuss with certainty because of the intensely compartmentalized nature of the agency, coupled with the standardized operational procedure of refusing to leave paper trails for covert operations. Footnote here. 3 of the most salient points concerning plausible denial, the bane of assassination researchers and theorists, were laid out by William Harvey himself. No projects on paper, strictly person-to-person, singleton ops, and never mention the word assassination. This is in Masonry and other traditions. This is called mouth-to-ear transmission, and mouth-to-ear transmission is actually incredibly functional, useful, and robust. People overestimate the value of writing shit down.
Yeah. This is interesting. One thing the CIA, the British intelligence, CIA and British intelligence agencies both internalized this relatively early on, actually. And though actually after this period, that's because this is, again, just to contextualize, this is a period when most of the guys running the CIA and most of the guys running British intelligence were still very lo-fi tradecraft style professional operators who had worked their way up from the field operations and low-level offices
into the house operations.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I got me out the field
of World War II. Okay. And they have learned one of the lessons that we internalize from World War II. And I'm frequently, because you talk about all the things you want to talk about, I'm on record all over the place saying the only 2 interesting outcomes of World War II were the bomb and the Turing machine. And British intelligence, of course, famously uses the Turing machine to crack the Enigma code. Okay. And one of the things that British intelligence and the Soviet Union and the Americans all learned that the Germans do not learn is that writing things down opens up a whole set of weaknesses that what Donald Rumsfeld would term unknown unknowns. Okay. You write everything down, but of course they've also got this Enigma code. So, they pencil in Enigma code as a known. We know they can't intercept our transmissions, so we can write everything down. Common German error, okay? And this is really what leads. This is not why the United States wins world. It's not why the United States and the Soviets win World War II, but it's why we win it so completely. This is another thing about World War II. It was a blinding Allied victory, like Nazis, like Germany, like nice try, big guy, but they were really strangled. And this is not like World War I, where it's an actual near peer contest. Like there's a lot of narrative around World War II, but it's a spectacle. Because we have cracked the Enigma code, and for most of World War II, the British there's an office in the Pentagon where British and American military officers digest intercepted German write shit down and determine, according to the constraints of their prompt to their Turing machine, whether or not what the probability of us intervening with overwhelming force in a particular German operation is. Okay, and so we almost always know exactly what the motherfucking Germans are doing. The question is, can we intervene to thwart them without giving away that we have cracked the Enigma code? And that's what the gamification of war is. And these guys are all aware of that. First of all, these guys are much more brilliant than the people who run American intelligence now. And they are, first of all, they're constantly running these games on one another too, because they are suspicious that everyone else is either a potential institutional rival or a communist spy or both. Okay. And so there's an incredible amount underneath all of this like proto LLM shit that's going on. There is an incredible amount of very lo-fi tradecraft that's occurring. Okay. You know, and like, this is why the historical record, this is why the record is so incomplete, because these people die without saying anything, but they know better than to say they know better than to write shit down, you know. And that was a long digression, but that's an important aspect of this whole, of everything that becomes the spectacle of JFK, is that we have some information, but we only have enough information really to know that there are giant negative spaces in the narrative that we can detect, and we know we're never going to get back, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we have roles. We have roles of just people who were compensated for work, and we have no idea what they were doing for decades.
Yeah, what the fuck were you doing? You know, like, it's like, if you look, there's an address like 2221 Perdido Street, New Orleans, and you go there and it looks like it hasn't been inhabited in years, and you're like, what the fuck? There's nothing here. You know?
Yep.
Oh man.
Perdido
I love
Street
it.
Station. Yeah. All right. The CIA. Long the favorite of conspiracy scholars who prefer God damn it. I already said this. All right. Senior level officers, Section A. Alan Dulles, Director of Central Intelligence, 1953 to 1961. Lieutenant General Charles Cabell, Deputy Director of CIA during the Bay of Pigs and brother of Earl Cabell, Mayor of Dallas from May 1961 to February 1964. Richard M. Bissell, Deputy Director for Plans, Deputy Director of Planning from 1958 to 1962, head of the Cuba Project, 1961 through 62, and initiator, of CIA Mafia assassination operations. Richard Helms, Deputy Director of Planning and Chief of Operations from 1952 to 65, creator of Zapata and Rifle. The James Jesus Angleton,
My
Associate
favorite. James
Deputy
Jesus Angleton
Director,
mentioned.
Associate Deputy Director of Operations for Counterintelligence, 1954 to 1975. Long ass tenure.
James Jesus Angleton is the member. He was he's really the last survivor of this group of people. And I bring him up all the time. Famously sacked in the 1970s for because he's sacked once before 1975 for devoting too much internal attention to investigating the Students for the Democratic Society. So like, and he's like in common, like LaRouchian, like if you're familiar with Lyndon LaRouche, in a lot of like conspiratorial frameworks, the sacking of James Jesus Angleton is generally considered the moment United States counterintelligence fell to the Soviet Union, because he was the last person investigating internal communist subversion within the military industrial complex.
Did James Jesus Angleton get sacked for U.S. sins?
Yeah, that's he was
sacked for our sins.
He's the good guy in this whole in this whole story. Like, so he's like, when you're talking about these,
when he was fired, everyone posted "Patriots out of control."
Yeah. But you know, whenever you dive in, one of the ways to explore a conspiracy theory is to pick a guy that you've kind of decided is probably, if not right most of the time, at least a recognizably moral actor. James Jesus Angleton is my guy. He's in the absence of an objective correlative, I use him as a relative correlative when orienting myself in the JFK, in all of these MK Ultra JFK type narratives. Like, whatever James Jesus Angleton is doing, I either assume he was on the right track or he was at least trying, you know.
Fair enough. Dulles, Cabell, and Bissell, Dulles' most likely successor, were all scapegoated and then sacrificed by JFK following the failure of Zapata. B. Middle-level officers. William Harvey, head of Special Operations CIA International Assassination Team ZR Rifle, and supervisor of Task Force W, the CIA operations component of Mongoose, which included joint assassination efforts with Chicago mafiosi Johnny Rossellini.
Mob mentioned.
Footnote. See below in this chapter. Simpish has made the most powerful argument that I have ever read for Harvey as a leading suspect as a conspiracy planner. Although Harvey was taken off Mongoose and appointed head of the CIA station in Rome by Robert Kennedy in June 1963, there is clear evidence that Harvey continued to participate in anti-Castro counterintelligence operations. Furthermore, as Simpish has shown, Harvey also served as head of the CIA's Staff D, which ran a series of major wiretapping operations in Mexico City and apparently liaisoned with the National Security Agency. The two most important of these wiretapping operations were L'Envoy, which targeted the Cuban and Russian consulates and embassies in Mexico City, and LIFAT, which focused on the residences and private telephones of Cuban and Russian Foreign Service staff. Simpish, Chapter 2 and 4. For the possible significance of these wiretapping operations for JFK Dallas, see below this chapter. Even after his exit to Rome every 4 to 6 weeks, Harvey traveled to Miami to visit his friend and accomplice, Johnny Rossellini. Rossellini would reciprocate by visiting Harvey every time the latter was in Washington. Oh, they were buddies.
I would also point out that like this is the second book we've done this. We're sketching the outer limits of my conception of the world. Like, you know, if you follow me at all, I keep myself remarkably confined to locations that are like sort of mentioned in text like this. So it's like you might find me in DC, you might find me in Miami, but you're probably not going to find me in Chicago. You know, or maybe Chicago.
So what you're saying is I should look for you in Chicago.
Yeah. No, exactly. I love this. The geographic contours of this story to me are at least like an aberration in the heartland of the real. You know,
aberration mentioned. Someone quoted Don DeLillo. Reset the clock. Theodore Shackley, operational head of JM Wave, the Miami-based CIA station for Mongoose. David Atlee Phillips, a.k.a. Maurice Bishop, disputed whether they're the same person. CIA chief of covert action in Mexico City from 1961 through fall of 1963. And Tracy Barnes, assistant director of plans to Richard Bissell for Zapata, head of domestic operations branch under Angleton from 1962 to 63. Short tenure there. Low-level officers. Howard Hunt, chief of covert ops for the domestic operations branch under Barnes. James McCord, operational liaisons with anti-Castro field agents. Note, both Hunt and McCord share the code name Eduardo. David Sanchez Morales, field chief of JM Wave secret war operations, including all Cuba penetration teams. Provided operational support to Task Force W assassination operations through both Harvey and Rossellini, and as an additional low-level officer, we could probably add George H.W. Bush, who provided material support for Zapata and was mentioned in a J. Edgar Hoover in two memos, one from J. Edgar Hoover immediately after the JFK assassination, saying that George H.W. Bush of the CIA was briefed on the findings.
And where was George H.W. Bush on the morning of the Kennedy assassination?
It is disputed. Some people say he was in Tyler, Texas.
He's inexplicably in Texas. Another character that's mentioned.
Well, he was running for Senate in Texas.
Yeah, I know, but this is what it is like. He has proximity. Is one of the things that's going on here, and I would point out.
But the thing is that like he definitely could have been in both places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like because Tyler, Texas was not far from Dallas.
Yeah, no, it's not far at all. Okay, now also because he just gets like sort of slid in there We've also put an important character on the board in the figure of E. Howard Hunt. If you're familiar with the famous Three Tramps photograph, he is the most recognizable member of the Three Tramps photograph. He is also the man who is he not the one that's tasked with the Watergate break-in? I think he either ran the wiretapping team or ran the team that did the Watergate break-in, and then spent the rest of his life writing theoretical exposés of life in the CIA in the 1960s. And every single one of them is bullshit. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure that we're going to have I'm sure that we're going to see Hunt later on in this book when we get to Watergate.
Because he's one of the guys who, like, I guess it was Randall Sugar, so they said that somebody forgot to mention the German strategy of writing down so much that it seems to be encrypted. The CIA guys were into that too. And E. Howard Hunt is one of the guys that floods any attempt to investigate any of this shit with this giant ex post facto historical smear that implicates everything, everyone, and everything. And he makes this the first most recognizable tramp, of course, is Sandbatch. Wonk, wonk, wonk.
All right. Cosa Nostra, aka the Wise Guys. These include but are not limited to the following: Johnny Rossellini, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, liaisons with William Harvey, Task Force W. W? Huh.
Yeah.
Santo Traficante, Tampa, Miami, and Havana. Robert Mayhew, Las Vegas, connection with Howard Hughes. Carlos Marcello, New Orleans and Dallas. John D. Martino, personal courier between Traficante and Marcello. Sam Giancana, Chicago, good guy. Jimmy Hoffa, the Teamsters. I like how they just include him in the mafiosi. They're just like, yeah, you know. And last but certainly not least, the assassin of the assassin, Jack Ruby. Ruby, is that short for something?
Rubenstein, Traficante courier to Cuba and my mafia liaison with Operation Mongoose in Louisiana and Lake Pontchartrain. Oh my God.
Lake Pontchartrain. Also a subject of Mr. Jolyon West. Yeah. Mr. Jolyon West, who was bizarrely called in to interview Jack Ruby, after which point he was so terrified that he rammed his head multiple times into a cell block wall in an attempt to kill himself, and believed that all of the Jews in the world were going to be killed. Yeah,
God, that's such a weird story. Yeah, that is so like oh man, oh Jolyon. Wonderland Shadow says that
Jolyon West also of the Jewish persuasion himself.
Jolyon West
never
also
practicing.
Jolyon West inexplicably not a member of the Dramatis Personae yet.
He's still not in this book.
Oh my God! Did you control F?
Yeah. He's not in the book.
Wonderland Shadow, by the way, wants to know if we've talked about the Stone film yet. We're flickering in and out of the Stone
very
film.
briefly. You know what? We're gonna have to watch that on drive time eventually. We'll have a little. We could double feature it tomorrow if you want to. No, we might because we could. Well, tomorrow's Tuesday.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, but obviously maybe give some runway. So
and Wednesday we're doing K-pop Demon Hunters with the Prudentialists. So.
I'm streaming with the Prudentialists about Twin Peaks, so Brood's gonna have
on Thursday. It's a big week. Anyway, let's see here. I'm trying to do evergreen content, and we're talking about other shows that are happening at the same time. Although I consider the made men of the American mafia as lacking the requisite degree of gravitas to successfully plot and perform the assassination of the chief executive, the Goodfellas merit inclusion in my lineup not only because of the ferociously Cuba-centric nature of their motives, but also for the sheer constancy of their nomadic migrations through the covert spaces of central and military intelligence.
That's beautiful.
the deep meaning of these peregrinations were certainly not lost on Fabio Escalante, the director of the official Cuba investigation of JFK Dallas. The more details revealed concerning the conspiracy of Giancana and many others, the clearer it became that there were... I know, I'm doing Mexican.
The more details revealed.
I want to do
concerning the conspiracy.
I don't want to do. I don't want to. Man, I didn't want to do like Desi Arnaz. Like, I wanted to do Slowpoke Rodriguez, but Lucy. The more details revealed concerning the conspiracy of Giancana and many others, the clearer it became that there were no lines of demarcation between the mafiosi organization and the CIA. There were no white hats or black hats. Everything was a farce, for the use of fools, as Giancana would say. On many occasions, the organization of the mafia were one and the same thing. This was the case with Frank Fiorni, Giancana's lieutenant, who was simultaneously working on the government's espionage agency and was later implicated in the Watergate scandal under the alias of Frank Sturgis. Pretty good. Pretty good. I could Sturgis.
This is my favorite. My favorite.
I should have
Spanish
practiced
dialect.
it. Should have practiced it.
The Cuban is my favorite Spanish dialect. I love it.
You know, you got to do. We need an actual Spaniard. We need like a Castilian, so I could just lisp the shit out of it.
Right.
Mafia involvement with the Cuba project officially commenced on August 1960, when director Bissell began to explore the possibility of mounting a sensitive operation, i.e. assassination, against Fidel Castro. It was thought that certain gambling interests, which had formerly been active in Cuba, the mob, might be willing to assist and might have intelligence assets in Cuba and communications between Miami, Florida, and Cuba. Mr. Robert Mayhew was approached and asked to establish contact with a member or members of the gambling syndicate. Mr. Rossellini showed interest, indicated he had some contacts in Miami that he might use, met with a courier going back and forth to Cuba, never became part of the project current at the time for the invasion of Cuba, no memoranda, no written documents, orally approved by said senior officials of the agency.
I want to point out that Oswald Art is live DDDing me in the chat.
He is okay. So first, Wonderland Shadow. We had Josh Neal on Drive Time Movie Night recently. He was a very good guest. And I have read. I'm like 3/4 of the way through Understanding Conspiracy Theories, his book, and he is a Debordian. So yeah, definite overlap there. And yeah, Oz is definitely bullying the shit out of you. So, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say on that one.
The Wonderland Shadow says Sandy wishes he was a Galician 19th century painter. Some truth to that.
Let's see here. Penultimo, my second favorite Salvadorian. I'm a little insulted that Cap doesn't think I can coach him on racist Hispanic accents. I am certain that you could. Let's see here. Wonderland Shadow. Sandy wishes he was a Galician 19th century painter. Very true. Randall Shirker, you should definitely buy all of Josh Neal's books. Everyone should buy all of Josh Neal's books. What is it? Understanding Conspiracy Theories, Intolerant Interpretations, and another one whose name is escaping me at this point.
I'm almost certain I've met Josh Neal before, and if he's the guy that I remember him as, he was cool as hell. Yeah,
he's our Jolyon West because he's an actual psychologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does good shows with Last Things. Everyone should check those out. Let's see. Cosa Nostra is of interest for two additional reasons. Firstly, in the event that there actually were additional shooters in either single or teams, along with Oswald and Dealey Plaza, then it seems almost certain that these snipers were Cuban. The footnote number on this one is 88, which I'm just going to say is an insinuation that actually the shooters were Israeli.
I'm a little blown away that we just like snuck this in. Like it seems certain that if there were additional shooters, they were probably Cuban. What?
Well, that is part of the George H.W. Bush deal.
Yeah.
One thought is that some people say that certain figures in the Zapruder film were some of George H.W. Bush's Cubans, and 88. Dallas may, in fact, have been the third site on the list for the staging of the homicide/patricidal spectacle. On November 22nd in Chicago, Secret Service agents intercepted a 4-man sniper team, including 2 Cubans, who were apparently planning to assassinate JFK while he was watching the annual Army Air Force football game held in Soldier Field. Most striking of all was the shadowy presence of a Chicago-based version of the patsy Oswald, Thomas Arthur Valet, a former Marine, disaffiliated member of the John Birch Society, and alleged paranoid schizophrenic who worked in a warehouse that the presidential motorcade was to pass by on the way to the sports stadium, which, as in Dallas, would have required Kennedy's limousine to make a slow hairpin turn. Valet was arrested on the basis of a tip that he had threatened to kill Kennedy in Chicago. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
The president's trip to Chicago was canceled at the last minute. 2 of the snipers, whose names have never been declassified, were arrested but refused to talk during the interrogation and were subsequently released. The other 2 have never been identified. In their book, Ultimate Sacrifice, Lamar Waldron and Thomas Hartman discuss another possible attempt on JFK. This one planned for November 19th in Tampa, and once again involving right-wing antisocial patsy. This time, Gilberto Lopez. Well, let's see. They also provide a series of comparisons and a few contrasts between Lopez and Oswald. However, as Hancock had pointed out, all of the CIA reports on Lopez are second and third hand, apparently originating with David Morales' Death Squad unit with JM Wave.
That's an incredible combination of words.
I would love. Man, you know what? back in the 60s, there were guys operating Death Squad units, and what are we doing with our lives?
Yeah, we're reading about it.
I find this conclusion persuasive. All in all, the saga of Gilberto Lopez more probably reveals the creation of another Cuban-associated suspect than a lead in a Cuban conspiracy. Thomas Arthur Valet.
What a
want to know more about those?
That's one of the
Wonderland Shadow.
footnotes.
Wonderland. That is a wild fucking foot. That's a whole book worth of a footnote.
Yeah.
Wonderland Shadow for $2 attempts to send us on a wild fucking rabbit hole. Trick question: if y'all weren't Anglos, what would you be? Well, I'm a med. But I've grown up in an Anglo society. If I wasn't, I guess I'd be a med who grew up in a med society. How about yourself, Sandbatch?
He'd be code switching. It's impossible to imagine. I can't fathom the world outside my own Englishness. I would be a computer.
Hey, kid, I'm a computer. Stop all the download. Sorry, I'm very old.
You gotta pay us more money than that
you gotta pay us more
to derail this conversation.
Yeah, that's right. It's gonna cost at least 10 times as much.
That's easy. Chapel Hill.
Let's see. What's more DDD, College Chapel Hill or Stanford? Definitely Chapel Hill. Yeah. Let's see. Sex Freakman says it's a trick question because if you don't get an entropy, you're going to find out exactly how swarthy you can be.
Damn.
I'm getting darker. I'm getting darker and more dusky. Soon I will be indistinguishable from a true Saracen. Let's see. Oswald Lodge says Sandbatch admits that he'd like to be black or Chinese. Let's see. All right. Where am I here? No, like the thing is, Randall Shirker. So Randall Shirker says we know Sandbatch would be the biggest African dude in the group, but it's definitely like the thing is that there's a certain sort of gentility to a kind of rough and ragged white man that, like, if Sandbatch was any other race, it would just be, I mean, okay, yeah. maybe Chinese. Like if you were Chinese, I would think, oh, this guy knows drunken boxing. Yeah, you know what I mean?
That's so true. That's so true. Or like I know like a guy I could be a Chinese peptide supplier, you know.
Oh my god, this guy sells peptides. What do they do to you? Who fucking knows? They probably give you gallbladder cancer. Yeah. Like, yeah. Oh my god. Let's see.
I just learned about the peptide thing. This, by the way, chat. I just learned about massive numbers of dudes and women, for that matter, are injecting lab synthesized Chinese peptides that they purchase from the gray market that do like strange things, like give you like 12-hour erections
and change your eye color.
It's so wild, like so incredible to me that this is bathtub Ozempic is exactly what it is.
Yeah. I mean, Ozempic is a peptide. That's right. Yeah. Let's see. Escalante himself strongly insinuates that the two actual JFK shooters were the violently anti-Castro Eladio de Valle Gutierrez and Sandalio Herminino Diaz Garcia, both of whom De Valle was murdered in February 1967, shot through the heart and partially dismembered by a machete. At the time, New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison mentioned was seeking to question him as part of his investigation into the Kennedy assassination.
Dude, his investigation was so wild. So like the FBI, the chief of police that he put in charge of this investigation was a dude who had been involved with the FBI before by the name of Louis Gervich. He was either Louis Gervich or Antonio Gervich or something like that. And like when they brought in these two guys that they knew could positively identify Clay Shaw, and like brought him in for questioning, and then like they just turned up dead. And then the guy in charge of the investigation is this Gervich character. He promptly quits the NOPD and starts a private security firm that is to this day the largest one in the city of New Orleans. Like,
amazing.
Yeah, it's so much wild shit going on.
I want to make one note about this book. The bottom half of this page is footnote. The footnote is actually like 55% of the page.
But I mean, it's a fucking catastrophic footnote. I have read so many of these books.
The other Oswalds are so much better. Like, other Oswald, this is an all-time fucking footnote right here. This thing is the greatest. The Hulk Hogan footnote in
yes.
The False Flag is an all-timer. That's right. Let's see. So the other JFK shooters, both of whom doubled as members of Santo Traficante's Havana crew. The wise guy most intimately connected to the Cuban underworld, Del Valle Gutierrez, was involved with Traficante's heroin smuggling network. And Diaz Garcia served as Traficante's bodyguard in Havana. If Del Valle, and footnote again, if Del Valle Gutierrez and Diaz Garcia really were the extra shooters at Dealey Plaza, then this may provide the simplest possible explanation of all of one of the most frequently discussed aspects of JFK Dallas, that both Trafficante and or Marcello seem to have possessed some degree of prior knowledge of the assassination. Trafficante allegedly declared in the fall of 1962, the same time as the missile crisis, that JFK was going to be hit.
Now, the local lore on Marcello and the JFK shit is that Marcello is actually the guy that put the hit out. Okay, I've spoken with people who claim to have been downstairs in the restaurant the night this happened. Like I've spoken with them, and like apparently because the way the mob meets, they go this Italian restaurant over on. If anybody comes to visit me, I'll take you there. An Italian restaurant over on the West Bank in West Wego. It was the place Carlos Marcello had supper every night. Okay. And they call a meeting of, they have a meeting of whoever, all the people who were possibly involved here. There's a big high level meeting. When they arrived and they go upstairs, and one of the things this eyewitness that spoke to me said he noticed was that there were no wine glasses on the table, which means we're going to talk about serious fucking shit tonight. Okay. And the argument, the story that's put forward to me is that Marcello is pissed at the Kennedys because the Kennedys sort of purchased I don't have to explain this. The Kennedys purchased their election to the presidency by getting the Chicago mob to flip.
Yeah.
Okay. And do literal ballot stuffing in the Chicago precincts.
Vote early and often.
Yeah,
vote and late in
right.
Chicago.
Right. Marcello is because again, if you notice, the other city whose mob we're referring to here is the Chicago mob. So Marcello is involved in that operation, and then Bobby Kennedy, after the Bay of Pigs, especially, turns on them and starts going after organized crime aggressively. And so the story is at this meeting at this Italian restaurant in West Wego. Okay, Marcello, the idea of killing JFK, the idea of killing RFK is floated. And Marcello says, no, you can't kill Bobby because then you got a pissed off Jack to deal with. And so they decide they're striking back at Bobby Kennedy by shooting Jack Kennedy. And that's the night they put the hit out. That's the local lore that I've spoken to somebody who says they were an eyewitness to this evening. But again, everyone is crazy and the story's all made up.
I think that, I don't know. I think that the mob probably wouldn't have used Sirhan for the hit.
No. We're talking about the JFK. We're talking about the JFK.
Oh, the JFK one. Okay.
Yeah. This is because they've decided they can't just kill Bobby Kennedy, because if they kill Bobby Kennedy, then JFK is still the president. So if you're gonna get back at the Kennedys, because you remember they think in terms of like family. You get back at the Kennedys by killing Jack. And, I don't think this narrative is true, but I do think that this person that I spoke to was there and present at a meeting with Carlos Marcello where something was discussed to the effect that Marcello had foreknowledge that this event was going to occur. Mm-hmm. So this is just to buttress that event. This is what I'm sort of doing is I'm not doing very good historical work here, because this is an eyewitness that spoke to me.
I mean, I love this hearsay. It's amazing hearsay.
This is
the best.
This is an eyewitness that spoke to me some 50 years after the fact, is currently dead, and was very young at the time. But probably I get the idea that there was something that happened. Maybe not anything like the story that I was told, but something happened.
Right. All right. Also, both seem to have been connected with Operation 40, the homicidal Cuban counterintelligence unit established in Miami. Another footnote. Abarelli repeats the theory of two Cuban snipers at Dallas, but identifies one of them as Nestor Izquierdo, the former Brigade 2056 member and veteran of the Bay of Pigs. Operation 40 originated as an ultra-covert branch of the Zapata plan. intended to operate as a death squad within the liberated Cuba, eliminating all
so
political
based.
rivals to Manel Artime, the administration's preferred leader of post-Castro Cuba. Although officially disbanded after the Bay of Pigs, it continued to operate domestically in clandestine form throughout the Kennedy presidency, continuing its activities as an extremist counterintelligence unit with extensive ties to organized crime up until the 1970s.
So that's like, remember what I
Fucking based.
Yeah, there's like nothing about that that's not absolutely incredible. But until the 1970s, this is what I was talking with the James Jesus Angleton and the dismantling of internal counterintelligence. Yeah, so like, but I mean, yeah, it's also true that maybe our literal internal counterintelligence were death squads operating beyond the reach of the law on domestic soil. I don't know.
Daley is an absolute fucking legend in Chicago.
Yeah.
An absolute legend.
Well, it's a dynasty. There's more than one of them.
Yeah. Oh, the Dailies. I mean, look, Chicago politics are actually the dirtiest.
It's probably a toss-up between New Orleans and Chicago.
I mean, Chicago's it's real tough to beat. I mean,
yeah,
they say if you go to prison in Illinois, you're going to the governor's mansion. Secondly, there is strong circumstantial evidence to suggest that Trafficante was actually protecting Castro by providing him with information on the assassination plots, all of which ended in farcical failure. If this is correct, then Trafficante would appear to have been acting to secure a prior standing agreement with the Castro regime concerning his continuing control over the Havana terminus of the French Connection heroin pipeline. Let's see. We're going to do that footnote. Santo Trafficante was indeed the mole in the exile assassination plots, reporting back to Fidel Castro. This was confirmed by other participants such as Sam Giancana and Johnny Rossellini. Referring to Trafficante, Giancana allegedly said, "Frankly, he's a rat."
He's a rat. I love it. That's just like bold speculation. Like, we've now descended. Just with respect to the narrative here, Wilson has brought us directly into the spectacle, because and there's a theoretical point about the spectacle is that even when you write about the spectacle, you are participating.
You're spectacling
by the very nature, by the very sort of porous nature of the spectacle itself. To even acknowledge the spectacle is to participate in it. So this is like a whole Alice in Wonderland bit going on where you can only talk about these events if you are aware that you are yourself through the looking glass and participating in the conspiracy itself. And this is a point I want you to remember, especially I want you to remember this whenever you start offering your perspective on the Charlie Kirk stuff that's going on, by calling attention to the spectacle, by participating in the narrative. You are yourself becoming the spectacle. Okay, So this is a cybernetic concept, by the way. This is
correct. Yes,
Norbert Wiener cybernetic concept.
And Debord even said that you actually can't. Even in the situationist solution, you can't repeat situations. Like the second time, it's the spectacle.
That's that's a bit of his Marxism. Marx is famous as history.
That's a bit of his Dada. That's a bit of his Dadaism, which, if anything, is his most right wing quality.
Well, there's that. You're familiar with the Marx quote that all of history, recurs twice. The first time is tragedy. The second time is farce.
Time is a farce. Yeah. But I mean, he was also influenced by Dadaism, and Dadaism is directly tied to fascists. But in terms of the artistic vein that produced situationism. Anyway,
Sex Freakman says, "I'm doing it for Madada, and I'm doing it for Donata."
That's so true. Send more.
Sneak
No
those
man
super
ever
chats.
commits the same fed up twice. That's right. You can never go back. Yeah, Trafficante is a sick name if you're trafficking.
All of these people
Like,
have the most incredible names, and like it's also like you cannot imagine any of these people as not looking totally badass. Like there are only two registers in this story, and it's like black Brooks Brothers suits, and like the other possibility is like those like fucking hand woven Hawaiian shirts that are like unbuttoned, and like straw hats and aviator sunglasses, like, you know, and like you're like just pouring sweat and you're drunk all the time, you know, like this is the only two modes this story has.
That's right. The transversal flows of pipelines, it would appear, induces a parallel iterability of identities. Anti-Castro Cubans. Organizationally, this body of suspects may be somewhat artificially divided into two groups. One, the ones we covered in the last page's footnotes. The political, the revolutionary junta in exile, Jure. The Cuban Student Revolutionary Directorate, DRE, and let's see, footnote, the DRE, codenamed Amspell by the CIA, was under the direct supervision of David Atlee Phillips and was responsible for radicalizing Cuban opposition against Castro, possibly as a means of generating popular support for a future intervention in Cuba. The Movement for the Recovery of the Revolution, MRR, the Cuban Revolutionary Council, CRC, the Sierra Junta, JGCE, Unidad, a coalition of 27 independent anti-Castro groups, the one that has the best acronym, actually, Spanish for United, I think, and the paramilitary Operation 40, the November 30 movement, Commandos L, and Alpha 66. In my opinion, Alpha 66 is of particular importance, not least because its operational bases were located in the New Orleans-Dallas corridor, the parapolitical space inhabited by Lee Harvey Oswald. It was one of the most militant of the anti-Castro groups, and its members appeared to have anticipated, for whatever reason, a second amphibious invasion of Cuba sometime in the early 1964, following JFK's re-election. It also openly provoked JFK through staging its own autonomous operations against Cuba. Let's see. Penultimo and Four Clubs are confirming that I do know that word in Spanish. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, guys, we will get an entropy. I swear to God, we will get an entropy. I know entropy's working on StreamYards again.
The thing is, like, I feel like we had an entropy, and then it was
broke. It broke on Stream. Yeah, our entropy broke like site wide on StreamYards, and now works again. But I have to set it all up again.
All of this talk of money, I did a rare self shill over on Twitter a second ago and said, and pointed out, what did I say? I already forgot what I said. I said, oh yeah, if you enjoy a rare self shill, if you enjoy the noospheric hazards I subject myself to for your entertainment, you can convert that goodwill directly into materialized debt at buymeacoffee/Sandbatch.
And Cap will never see a dime of such funds. So, let's see. Oswald Art. Are there any political conspiracy books on circumcision being more common in the U.S.? Yes, it's called the Talmud.
Yeah,
read it. All right. Alpha 66 was the Cuban exile group, which especially seemed to taunt President Kennedy. Not content to limit its assaults to attacks against Cuba and Castro's forces, it also went after foreign ships, supplying Castro and conducted assassination raids on Russian troops in Cuba. Long before the missile crisis, when Kennedy's policy was to maintain separate U.S. policies towards Russia and Cuba, Alpha 66 seemed bent on provoking a direct conflict between Russia and the United States. At the height of the missile crisis during the delicate negotiations to keep World War III from erupting, Alpha 66 continued its raids into Cuba and assaults on Castro's patrol boats. After the crisis, when Kennedy had issued his directive to halt the raids and shut down the exile training camps, Alpha 66 defied the ban by continuing to operate secretly, even attacking British merchant ships in Cuban waters. A lead editorial in the New York Times warned, no matter how much we may admire the anti-Castroism that motivates its actions, this group is nevertheless dangerously playing with the laws and security of the United States. Wow. We used to be a proper country where you could just have right-wing paramilitary organizations doing piracy in the Gulf of Mexico against communists, and they could just keep going.
Like, this is where history ends for me. This, like, quite literally is the end of it. Like, that's like the Telos of C. Sandbatch is operating a small pirate ring in the Gulf of Mexico with like a Cuban.
You mean the Gulf of America?
You're
no patriot.
Yeah, with dudes that go by the name like Castellante, and this is it. Like, this is the fantasy world that I live in. Also, I want to point out, enabling my destructive lifestyle, I have a remarkably non-destructive lifestyle. It's like, as the great Bob Dylan once said, to live outside the law, you must be honest.
Let's see here. Alpha 66 may very well have been a front for the more extreme CIA elements staffing and operating JM Wave. In the face of the often expressed Kennedy administration's annoyance with the exile raiders and the officially announced crackdowns on this footnote goes to the next page, on their activities, documents, look at the fucking footnotes on this page. It is 3/4 of the page. Documents reveal that the Alpha 66 and Commandos L raids on Russian targets in Cuba were known to JM Wave in advance, and that no efforts were made to block them. A longtime CIA asset, Alberto Fernandez, routinely reported on the movements and plans of independent raider groups, including Alpha 66 and Commandos L. It is worth noting that along with Alpha 66 and the Dre, also undertook a number of undertook a number of highly aggressive raids against Cuba in direct violation of Kennedy's wishes. The most spectacular of these attacks was the shelling of the Icar Hotel in Havana on August 24th, 1962. David Phillips had operational oversight of the DRE.
Let's just take a moment here and just zoom in on one of these acronyms that we've been dealing with. JM Wave, the code name for a major secret United States covert operations and intelligence gathering station operated by the Central Intelligence Agency from 1961 to 1968. It was headquartered in Building 25 at the former Naval Air Station Richmond and an airship base in Miami, 12 miles south of the main campus of the University of Miami on what is today the present university's South Campus. The station's activities escalated, reaching their peak in late 1962 and 63 around the Cuban Missile Crisis under Theodore Shackley's leadership. From 1962 to 1965, JM Wave grew to be the largest CIA station in the world outside the organization's headquarters in Langley, Virginia, with 300 to 400 professional operatives, including possibly up to 100 based in Cuba, and handled an estimated 15,000 anti-Castro Cuban exiles with its payroll. The CIA
and that's why we can't audit the Pentagon.
Yeah, right. The main front company for JM Wave was Zenith Technical Enterprises Incorporated. In addition to 300 to 400 other front companies were created throughout South Florida with a large range of safe houses, cover businesses, and other properties with an annual budget of approximately $50 million, the equivalent to to equivalent to 530 million to 2024. The station had a major impact on the economy of South Florida, creating a local boom, particularly in the real estate, banking, and certain manufacturing sectors. It operated a fleet of aircraft and boats, was the third largest navy in the Caribbean at the time. JM-Wave's activities were so widespread they became an open secret among the local Florida government and law enforcement agencies. So literally, JM-Wave, in addition to being the cover under which these like right-wing death squads are operating in and around the United States, is also the more functionally the incubator that created the Miami boom of the later half of the 20th century. Incredible. Yep.
It's just that spook cash. That's right. Let's see. Worse, Alpha 66 seems to have been implicated in some way with one of the most compelling incidents presaging JFK Dallas. Leon Oswald's notorious meeting with Sylvia Odio, an activist for the Social Democratic Jure in Dallas on September 26th or 27th, 1963, is alleged to have taken place in the presence of two members, Leopoldo and Angel, of the Dallas chapter of Alpha 66. They had chapters, they had regional chapters. This is a CIA death squad operating out of Miami that has a chapter in Dallas. Just,
because what? I mean, Dallas again.
Why not?
It is. These are the right. Oh my God. There's so much Sandbatchian, Thomas Pynchon shit going down, all over.
All right.
Oh my
Hold
God.
on. We got another chunker of a footnote here. It is literally the bottom half of this page and fully 60% of the facing page. So we're gonna do this because the footnotes in this book are the best. The best footnotes.
This is the
greatest footnotes. The best footnotes. Everybody says.
I talk about this sometimes on the timeline. I had a professor in grad school that was an absolute master of the footnote, and I love well-written footnotes. Like, I fucking love them. David Foster Wallace has nothing on this kind of footnote. Like, that's like bullshit. These are incredible footnotes.
All right. Several days after the unexpected visit, Odio received a telephone call from one of the Mexican-looking men who told her that Leon was an ex-Marine, an expert marksman, and he would be a tremendous asset to anyone. Except you never know how to take him. He could do anything, like getting underground in Cuba, like killing Castro. He says we Cubans don't have any guts. We should have shot Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs. He says we should do something like that. Soon after the visit, Odio wrote a letter to her father describing the uncanny encounter and telephone conversation, a letter that preceded Dealey Plaza by almost 2 months. Both of Odio's parents were familiar with Antonio Vecchiana, the founder and head of Alpha 66. For Fonzie, if the incident did occur as Odio contended, understanding it was key to grasping the truth about Lee Harvey Oswald and the John F. Kennedy assassination. No theory of the assassination would stand without somehow accounting for it. That was the very point that the Warren Commission itself quickly recognized. On August 23rd, 1964, with the first drafts of the Warren Commission reports being written, Chief Counsel J. Lee Rankin wrote to J. Edgar Hoover. It is a matter of some importance to the commission that Mrs. Odio's allegations either be proved or disproved. An obvious problem with Odio's account is that on the basis of the official story formulated by the Warren Commission, Oswald was in Mexico at the time. However, this problem disappears if we assume either that Leon Oswald was actually an impersonator meant to cause Odio to misidentify the real Oswald as the future assassin of the president, or that there were actually two separate persons called Oswald being stage managed by U.S. counterintelligence, allowing Lee and Leon to parapolitically inhabit two different spaces at the same time.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's literally this is my cousin
Hold on.
Leon Oswald, you know, and it's like literally just
Similarly,
like with the like
hold on.
Yeah.
Similarly, for Kaiser, Odio's visitation confirms that President Kennedy was assassinated by a conspiracy for which Lee Harvey Oswald was simply the triggerman. As it turns out, the visit links Oswald and his crime to an enormous network of mobsters, anti-Castro Cubans, and right-wing political activists. Odio's testimony was discounted by the FBI on psychiatric grounds. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Burton Einsbruch, advised James Hosty, the FBI agent investigating the case and a frequent contact with Oswald in late 1963, that Odio suffered. Why was he a frequent contact with Oswald? A frequent contact with Oswald in 1963, that Odio suffered from grand hysteria, a condition that he found to be prevalent among Latin American women from the upper class. So true, King. If Odio's story is true, then Leon may have been either Oswald himself, which would mean that he was being impersonated in Mexico City, or was the infamous second Oswald, who was highly active in Dallas at the time. A typo. Peter Dale Scott strongly hints that the second Dallas Oswald was John Thomas Mason, a Dallas gun dealer and supporter of the far-right group, the Minutemen. Not only was Mason stockpiling weapons to sell to anti-Castro Cubans, but he bore an uncannily strong physical resemblance to Oswald. Even worse, he owned the only gun store in Dallas that carried ammunition for the Mannlicher Carcano rifle, the weapon allegedly used by Oswald to kill Kennedy. A final note, the FBI file on Mason was assigned to Agent Hosty. Yeah. Sandbatch, you were saying about the many Oswalds.
I was gonna say he like reminds me of the time Bobby Valentine got kicked out of New York Mets baseball game, and he put on a disguise, including a mustache, and tried to come back as his Hispanic cousin. It's like, literally, this is my cousin Leon Oswald. He is just as good as shooting. But okay, this Burton Einsbruch character immediately triggered my jolly senses, and I went and looked this up, and he does, in fact, he does have authored texts that appear in volumes edited by Louis Jolyon West.
Amazing. What are the volumes?
This one's just this one just appears. A lot of these are in German. But these are catalogs of copyright entities, and then there's a CSES collection that has a text edited by him, but it doesn't list the titles of the articles.
Unfortunate.
It's very convoluted, but the physical copy of this text does exist somewhere. Fascinatingly, like I said, Dr. Einsbruch appears to still be alive and living in Dallas.
He must be old as shit.
Yeah, he was born in 1935.
There's no fucking way. I mean, he's on his deathbed if he is alive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's nearly done. But
yeah.
He was interviewed by the Dallas Historical Jewish Society in October of 2013. But his LinkedIn doesn't. He has 47 connections on LinkedIn and doesn't appear. He's not been officially registered as dead by the easily searchable internet.
Okay. Well, also of potential significance are Alpha 66's extensive affiliation, along with the other extremist paramilitaries, with a nomadic community of anti-Castro Americans, mercenaries, gun runners, narcotics traffickers, and contract CIA agents, which included William Rip Robertson, Lauren Eugene Hall, Lorenzo Pasio, Roy Hargraves, Lawrence Howard, William Seymour, and Gerald Patrick Hemming, founder of the Intercontinental Penetration Force, that's what they call me, a highly autonomous outfit of mercenary freebooters, freebooters being a synonym, once again, for pirates. Kaiser tentatively identified Odio's visitors, Leopoldo and Angel, as Lauren Hall and Lawrence Howard. Hall was suspected to have participated in Alpha 66's raids on Cuba. Man, imagine joining a right-wing death squad's raid on communist Cuba in the 1960s.
I imagine it at least 4 times a day.
You don't
gotta tell me. You don't gotta tell me.
It's gonna be a lot
twice.
more frequent from now on. Yeah. The wider community of Cuban anti-Castro activists in which Alpha 66 was embedded was similarly vast and not coincidentally directly overlapped with Oswald's own contacts within both the pro and anti-Castro underground. Footnote 100. Almost too numerous to name. These include Sergio Arancha Smith, Emilio Santana, Carlos Quiroga, Manuel Artime, Eddie Bayo, Orlando Bosch Avila.
What a name.
Eladio de Valle Gutierrez, Sandalio Hermenino Diaz Garcia, Mentolino Rodriguez, Manuel Oscabero, Ronaldo Masferrer, Antonio Cuesta, Carlos Prios Socares, Manuel Rey, Paulino Sierra Martinez, Felipe Vidal Santiago, Antonio Varona, Harmonio Diaz. Wait, are we already said Harmonio Diaz Garcia? Maybe it's a different one. 2
of them.
Yeah. Each had their own agenda, political and personal, and their radical proliferation evidences the highly nomadic and heterogeneous nature of the endlessly subdividing dual state, at least on its clandestine frontier with the Cuba project. He really just had to work in his idea of the dual state rather than
the dual state is important here, but for reasons that I've decided this material is too exciting to interrupt and talk about. Maybe I'll talk about it at the end.
Four Club says Juan de los Pantalones, Pipe Mipi de los Santos, Guadalupe Taco Churro.
Guadalupe Taco Churro. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yes.
It's so wonderful. All of it. It's just like,
oh God. Honestly, you know what? I prefer them in their own country, but it is very fun to say an extremely long Latino name.
But it's incredible because they're Cubans, which makes them somehow more entertaining and more sinister than Mexicans. But like everything, like these people are all living in like concrete style barracks housing, like in like non-disclosed locations in the hinterland of Florida and Southeast Louisiana and
these dudes just had compounds in the Everglades with multiple rings of claymores, like surrounding them.
Real True Detective hours, like that's how sketchy and undeveloped this whole area is. I also would like to go back and point out the incredible agency that we are, and this is one of the wild things about the JFK story all around, is the incredible agency with which Lee Harvey Oswald seems to act while also somehow being a patsy. So like, you have to picture him as like this free radical careening through this there's spectacles inside of spectacles. Okay.
He's very Lee Harvey Oswald was very Sandbatchian.
I've said it before. I graduated from the same elementary school he did, but yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald is very like sort of Sandbatch coded in the sense that he like seems to operate with an incredible amount of leniency, but his agency is somewhat reduced. Like he's like, we should do something like kill Kennedy. Like, okay, so like,
I'm shocked that you don't have a graduate degree from Lumumba University in Russia.
No, it's from Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is like not entirely outside of the operating procedure. Because look, my history program was literally a history program that was juiced in the 1950s and 60s by the specific need for Latin American and Cuban specialists to participate in these operations. So it's one of these incredible, but again, like Oswald, he's operating with what appears to be incredible agency, but within this very tightly constructed matrix that is itself a spectacle within the spectacle. Like if you buy that Oswald is a patsy, it's important that his actions be both both seem to be his idea, but also that the environment and the social pressure and the conditional pressures under which every one of his actions and utterances is taken is pre-engineered to produce a certain outcome.
Yeah. Another thing that's very Sandbatchian. Have you ever seen a picture of Lee Harvey Oswald's wife?
She's a smoke show. She's a Russian smoke show. Yes.
She sure was. She sure was.
Yes.
Anyway, let's see here. Where was I? Oh, although I will take up this issue later, it is worth noting for now that 3 of the most important members of the Cuban diaspora, Frank Fiorni, Frank Sturgis, same guy, Eugenio Martinez, Bernard Barker, were all members of the future Nixon plumbers and were arrested during the Watergate break-in of June 17th, 1972. Of course, he will mention it later because he will say that Watergate was an op by the CIA to frame Nixon for misconduct and make him leave office, which worked and is true. Arguably, the single most important of these usual suspects is Antonio Vecchiana, who founded Alpha 66 in mid-1962, apparently under the aegis of the CIA. Alpha 66 emerged in early 1962, with Vecchiana as its founder and chief spokesman. It received more press coverage than other militant exile groups because it appeared better organized, better equipped, and consistently more successful in its guerrilla attacks and sabotage operations. You could just put that in the regular news back in the day. With strong management, clever use of propaganda, organizational and fundraising skills, and expertise. How good at fundraising do you have to be? You just get your money from the CIA.
No,
drug running.
What this means is laundering it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Organizational and fundraising skills and expertise in weaponry and military operations. Alpha 66 soon rose to the forefront of Miami's numerous anti-Castro exile groups.
Yeah, I mean, see, you of all people would be aware of this, that what created the Miami, and what, in an ongoing sense, really, what created the Miami real estate boom. Like, you remember a couple of years ago when all these buildings in Miami were just falling down and people were dying?
Yeah.
This is because almost every building, almost all development in Miami over the course of the last 50 years or so has just been like direct money laundering operations from like this is the CIA laundering cocaine money, laundering cocaine money.
They had to get rid of all this extra cocaine, so they used it as binder in the concrete, which is why those condo buildings fell down.
Yeah, it's not quite that bad, but they're laundering money by offloading it to fly-by-night construction firms that are producing slipshod buildings for pennies on the dollar to like maximize the efficient rate of money laundering in South Florida. And that's why all of these buildings started falling down at one time. They were made by they were just not meant to actually be real buildings. They're like those big empty cities in China, you know?
Oh yeah. Where the buildings just occasionally fall right the fuck over.
Yes.
Yeah, because they didn't build them with foundations.
The whole point is to pay the service contractors in dirty money and get
your kickback and get your kickback and exactly, and launder, get back 30% of the funds you put out.
Yeah.
Yep. Seawook Dev asks, what do we get out of the CIA again? Well, apparently we get Cuban death squads in the I don't know what they've been doing in since the 60s.
No, this is not going to sound good, but as somebody who
we probably get tranny death squads now.
If anyone is familiar with LMD at this point, it is apparently obvious that I am a glow spook of some provenance that even I can't discern. But the
Sandbatch is a patsy. We just don't know for what.
Right. In my many sojourns through strange contacts with government agencies, I have arrived at the conclusion that of all of the guys, the CIAs are the goodest guys still. They're the best we got. for better or worse.
Yeah. Cuban intelligence was particularly interested in both Vecchiana and his organization, as Escalante makes clear. We discovered that in September 1963, Vecchiana was linked to two events closely related to the Kennedy assassination. The first was the establishment of an Alpha 66 office in Dallas, headed by Manuel Rodriguez Oscabera, one of his men. Located on Hollandale Street, it would appear to be the same place in which Oswald, or a subject very similar to him, was seen a few days before the crime by the Dallas deputy sheriff, according to his testimony before the Warren Commission. Let's see. For Fonzie commenting on an article about Sylvia Odio by Paul Hotch and George O'Toole that appeared in the Saturday Evening Post in 1976. Alpha 66 had chapters all over the country, and that one of the chapters Vecchiana visited in Dallas at 3126 Hollandale. Look that up, Jamie.
That's what I'm doing.
Digging in the mounds of the Warren Commission files, Hotch had found a report by a Dallas deputy sheriff saying that an informant told him that a person resembling Oswald was seen associating with Cubans at 3128 Harlandale.
Yeah, I was going to say the correct address for the house he's talking about is 3126 Harlandale. Okay. Harlandale.
Yeah.
But there is a 3126 Hollandale. So Harlandale.
Vecchiana also told Gaten Fonzie, lead investigator for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, that a few days before the assassination, he went to Dallas for a meeting with his CIA case officer, Maurice Bishop. On arrival, he found the officer talking with the subject who was not introduced to him, whom he later recognized as Oswald, or someone very like him. By chance, at the same time that the Cuban exile Sylvia Odio claimed to have received a visit from Oswald with two counter-revolutionary activists in Dallas.
It looks exactly like a CIA safe house.
Yeah, one would think. Let's see. Although there is little doubt concerning the importance of Vecchiana within the Cuban exile movement, controversy over the identity of Alpha 66's alleged CIA contact, Maurice Bishop, remains. Both Escalante and Fonzie became convinced that Bishop was, in fact, David Atlee Phillips, at the time the agency's chief covert action in Mexico, chief of covert action in Mexico City. I will discuss Phillips as Bishop in more detail later. Of more immediate importance is that Bishop, like Alpha 66, were strongly committed to a full-scale U.S. military invasion of Cuba. Vecchiana claimed that Bishop constantly pressured him to engage in actions against Cuba. In March, come on, do something. In March 1963, Alpha 66 actually conducted a series of raids against Soviet ships in Cuban ports. Vecchiana stated that Bishop had planned and ordered these raids in a desperate attempt to foment a confrontation between the United States and the USSR over Cuba. A confrontation that would, Bishop believed, involve an American military invasion of the island.
Reminder that all of this is happening under the CIA's watch, under the CIA's, the more extreme paranoiac wing of the CIA's like certainty that we need to provoke a nuclear exchange with the USSR before 1963. Like there is a death cult faction within the American intelligence complex that is actively trying to
the
start
Mayan
a war.
Cal in the basement.
Yes.
Said 1963.
EL says Oswald's wife was a 7 tops, maybe a 60s 9.
60s 9. She grew up in the Soviet Union, dude. She was looking fit for someone who grew up in the Soviet Union.
I gotta look at her. That, oh my fucking god, you all are. That is a fucking.
I can fuck.
Oh my god, yeah, I shouldn't have looked. She's so hot. Oh, look at this picture with her. Oh, she's like doing the like Natasha Kinski in Paris, Texas thing. Ah! Incredible.
He found her in a fucking factory town in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, or so we're told.
Well, that's the story, right? That's what's in Don DeLillo's Libra, which is the authoritative document.
It's the authoritative spectacle.
Yes. For the paramilitaries, the Cuban Missile Crisis provided the last window of opportunity for a direct U.S. attack of Cuba. Kudos to JFK for not doing that. The discovery of offensive missiles in Cuba provided precisely the pretext the United States would need to launch an invasion of Cuba. The opportunity was passed by. Ironically, it was precisely because of Mongoose and the not unreasonable apprehension of American invasion that it created that the Russians decided to install nuclear weapons in Cuba as a deterrent force. Predictably, the JCS regarded the first and most attractive option being debated by the White House during the first phase of the crisis, airstrikes, as merely the initial phase of a full-scale operation that would necessarily culminate in the invasion of Cuba. By the way, this is what they always think when they say, we're not going to do boots on the ground, we're just going to do airstrikes. That's always the plan. They're going to slippery slope you into an invasion. It doesn't always work, but that's what they're trying to do. The Joint Chiefs never deviated in their advocacy of a comprehensive military strike. As late as Sunday, October 28th, they still wanted an airstrike, followed soon after by an invasion. Kennedy was shocked. He commented that the first advice he would give his successor was to watch the generals and not think that just because they were military men, their opinions on military matters were worth a damn. Sorry, just because they're military men, their opinions on military matters are worth a damn. There we go. Perhaps the tenor of the relationship between the pseudo-Yankee president and his cowboy generals, we're finally circling back to that, was best expressed by the commandant of the Marine Corps, General David M. Shoup, in conversation with Air Force Chief of Staff General Curtis LeMay after their October 19th meeting with JKF. I'm going to say JFK.
I am surprised that Curtis LeMay has not entered the picture yet.
Well, they keep saying Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yeah, but he's
referring to all of them.
I think this is the first time Curtis LeMay has been mentioned by name. And he is, of course, George Wallace's running mate in the 1968 election. But prior to that, he is famously depicted in every fucking movie about the CIA in 1960s as that big fucking dude with the giant cigar, who is like he is earlier points in his career. He's the architect of the daylight bombing raids over Germany during World War II. He is the architect of the firebombing raids that turned the cities of Dresden and Hamburg into literal tornadoes of fire. When you're talking about like Americans with like blood on their hands,
pyroclasm,
he may have more blood on his hands than any other American in the history of our country.
Unbelievably based.
And at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, because he's one of these guys that is such an operator. He was such an ancient operator. The Camelot dudes couldn't get rid of him. The JFK regime couldn't get rid of him, but they wanted to get rid of him. And if you listen to the tapes of because the Kennedys taped everything, remember? There are like these there, and you can hear, if you listen to the tapes, you can hear him coming. You can hear his footsteps on the ground as he enters the office. And there's a hush that descends on the room. The Kennedys were scared of him. And he was at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was asked by somebody what we should do about the Cuba problem, and his response was fry it.
Fry it.
Yeah.
Fry it.
Wild guy.
Amazing. Let's see. Somebody's got to keep them from doing the goddamn thing piecemeal. That's our problem. Go in there and friggin' around with the missiles. Go in there and friggin' around with the lift. You're screwed. You're screwed. Screwed. Some goddamn thing, some way. They either do the son of a bitch and do it right, or quit friggin' around. Yet another example of the uncanny that envelops JFK Dallas. The timing of the missile crisis coincided exactly with the phase 4 of the original timetable of Operation Mongoose, which called for open revolt and overthrow of the communist regime in the first half of October 1962, to be followed in the second half by phase 5, the establishment of a new government. So easy to just establish a new government. Let's see. We'll do the footnote here. Lansdale showed himself utterly prescient when submitting the first timetable on February 20th, 1962. A vital decision still to be made is on the use of open U.S. force to aid the Cuban people in winning their liberty. If conditions and assets permitting a revolt are achieved in Cuba, and if U.S. help is required to sustain this condition, will the U.S. respond promptly with military force and aid the Cuban revolt? No. Consistent with the Mongoose timetable in February 1962, JFK authorizes the Joint Chiefs of Staff to drop Op Plan 314-61, a series of contingency plans accompanied by real-time military exercises to prepare an American invasion of Cuba in the event that Castro or the counter-revolutionaries provided an acceptable pretext. Ironically, it was Op Plan 314 that the Joint Chiefs of Staff relied upon when pushing for a full-scale attack of Cuba during the missile crisis. On February 21st, one day after the submission of Op Plan 314-61, the KGB formally advised Khrushchev that military specialists of the USA had revised an operational plan against Cuba to be supported by military air assets in Florida and Texas, which, according to this information, is supported by President Kennedy. However, instead of resolving the crisis through invasion, JFK negotiated a pledge from Khrushchev to withdraw the missiles in exchange for a binding promise from the U.S. not to invade Cuba. The day after announcing the formal end of the crisis on the 20th of November, Kennedy wrote to Khrushchev that there need be no fear of any invasion of Cuba while the matters take their present favorable course. Khrushchev chose to interpret this letter, saying that Kennedy had confirmed his commitment not to invade Cuba.
That's an interesting. That's an interesting line. Who is it? Where is that from? Boning. It's not. Yeah, it's been something that's been cited a bunch of times already.
Yeah, it's been cited. It's a citation from someone else's book. Although it is true that following the October crisis, both JFK and his double RFK had definitively decided against both U.S. military intervention in Cuba as well as covert action against Castro, including assassination, that could be directly attributable to the U.S., neither of the brothers were willing to suspend clandestine strategies altogether. Commenting on his own promise to Khrushchev, JFK reportedly remarked that an assurance concerning the invasion does not ban covert actions or economic blockade or tie our hands completely. Man, I'm fucking it up. I'm getting like Australian or something.
It's harder to do than you think. It's harder to do than you think.
It's really rough. We can't give the impression that Castro is home free. What appears to have been put in place by the White House between November 1962 and November 1963, it was an ultra-compartmentalized two-track approach to both Cuba and the Soviet Union. After effectively canceling Mongoose in December 1962, JFK moved to create an entirely new anti-Castro covert operation, codenamed AmWorld, that was to be stationed offshore, primarily in Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and to be manned and operated exclusively by Cubans. According to Talbot, this was in fact the primary objective of the operation. The brothers' main concern was to contain the Cuban exile problem, and offloading the militants to Central America had a certain political logic. Talbot is in no doubt that the Kennedys were following a two-track approach to Castro at this time, with back-channel negotiations the preferred strategy.
Interesting.
As 1963 progressed, the Kennedy administration was continuing its project to either eliminate the Castro regime in Cuba, track 1, or to get the Russians off the island through some work of agreement with Castro, track 2. President Kennedy authorized 13 new sabotage missions proposed by the special group on October 24th, 1963, and gave full support for the AM Trunk Project, a prospecting effort for Cuban military officers who might be willing to support a coup against Castro. Robert Kennedy was involved not only with these CIA-focused projects, but also with the new autonomous group efforts. This independent CIA team, separated from JM Wave, and with its own designation, AM World, and its own facility, was moving the Kennedy administration-sponsored exiles offshore to start a major new and fully deniable effort against Castro. This effort was scheduled to mount several major seaborne attacks into Cuba before the end of 1963, to organize a provisional government that could assume control after a coup against Castro and ultimately lead to a new regime. Sometime during January to February of 1963, RFK met with Manuel Artime to discuss training a force of exiled Cubans to invade Cuba. The plan would be directed at provoking an uprising in Cuba, coordinated with an exile landing at 2 points, Matanzanas and Oriente, near the Guantanamo Naval Enclave.
This
The
is
officers-
a dog and pony show in hindsight, you know?
Yeah. The officers designated by the CIA for the plan were Howard Hunt and James McCord, both future Watergate plumbers. According to Waldron and Hartman, the date of the uprising/invasion, unimaginatively codenamed C Day, had been set for the 1st of December. AM World was headed by Manuel Artime, the founder and head of the MMR, and who enjoyed extensive connections with Texan millionaires. Do we know of a Texan millionaire?
I know a bunch of them.
Yeah, George H.W. Bush.
Oh, yeah, no, go for the story. Okay.
The MMR, along with many other of these anti-Castro private groups, were receiving extensive funding from petroleum interests and ranchers. Robert Kleberg, proprietor of the King Ranch. They went to petroleum interests and didn't say George H.W. Bush. Why are we never mentioned George H.W. Bush? Artime was given far more autonomy than had previously been associated with U.S.-backed efforts. In return, his charter was to operate totally outside the continental U.S. and to engage in a wide variety of public activities which would make his U.S. sponsorship totally deniable. Newly released CIA documents show that the Artime effort was highly compartmentalized and isolated even from other secret war operations within the CIA. So when he says engage in a wide variety of public activities which would make the U.S. sponsorship totally deniable, it means engage in anti-U.S. activities.
Mm-hmm.
Publicly be anti-U.S. I'm going to pay you to hate me. Like, I'm going to pay you to be loud about hating me.
Yeah. When has that ever happened before?
Yeah. On the other hand, JFK sought to de-link the Soviet Union from Cuba through the creation of the suspect back channel. Within the broader context of Détente 1, the U.S. would seek at least limited normalization with both of its communist antagonists. According to Special Presidential Aide Arthur Schlesinger, the real concern about Cuba in the last months of the Kennedy administration was the possibility of normalizing U.S.-Cuban relations. Of course, the price paid by JFK for Détente 1 would have been the cancellation of the invasion of Cuba, which makes the evidence provided by Vecchiana in his 1977 interview by the House Select Committee on Assassination that much more meaningful. According to Vecchiana, by the fall of 1962, his mentor, Phillips Bishop, Phillips/Bishop, was taking Alpha 66 and its media exploits in a totally new direction. The goal of the Cuba raids, now focused largely on Russians and Russian installations, was very focused. The purpose was to politically embarrass Kennedy and to force him to move against Castro. As Bishop remarked, they had to put Kennedy's back to the wall, forcing him to act against Castro. Let's see. XCOM meeting in the White House on October 30th, 1962. In his notes, McNamara indicates that JFK stated that insofar as we have any control over the actions of Alpha 66, we should try to keep them from doing something that might upset the deal with the Russians. Yep.
Now it's interesting that Shirker points out also that the White House tapes seem to contravene evidence that like something we've been directly told here. And if I remember, this is also somewhat true that that RFK in particular was all about the invasion of Cuba. Like he was kind of the bulldog in the room, actually. That doesn't invalidate the idea that they're pursuing this sort of dual approach, but like the idea that they have actually taken, I mean, of course, they obviously don't take military action off the table, but the idea that they were willing to escalate more than Wilson suggests may be in play.
Yeah. Sneed those super chats. Just pointing out again. Sneed them, and feed them. This may very well be what ultimately have led to the false flag of Dallas. Ironically, the extreme compartmentalization of AM World may have misled the paramilitaries to misjudge the level of JFK's commitment to normalization. Big footnote. Conversely, if AM World really was nothing more than an expedient means of containing the problem of Cuban exiles, then anti-Castro extremists would have interpreted the embryonic efforts at normalization as a third and final betrayal by the brothers Kennedy. In April 1964, Felipe Santiago Vidal, a Cuban exile working in close association with the IPF, was captured while on a penetration mission in Cuba. I've been on one of those.
Yeah.
Fabian Escalante claims that during the interrogation prior to his execution, Vidal claimed that he had been active in 1963 in informing Cuban exile groups in Dallas about the Kennedy administration attempts to start a dialogue with Cuba, that Kennedy was negotiating with Fidel Castro, and shortly a deal would be cut to leave Castro in power, eject the Russians, and destroy the hopes of the exiles for a return to Cuba. John Kennedy was about to destroy La Causa forever. It has been confirmed that both Ted Shackley and David Morales at JM Wave were aware of the back channel with Havana.
Which means, okay, so Shackley and Morales are these characters that have the ability to sort of be passing this information along to the Cuban exiles. I am not certain that this is such an edge case. This is one of these times where, again, we know there's information out there, but this is a pretty big, again, because like the text wall is getting large. If you're trying to maintain a graph of who is who and who's doing what, this is like a big chunk of text that we just went through. And if you mind, the claim is that AM World, which is this massive organization of Cuban exiles, essentially the white Russian cause of Cuban exiles, who are being given these make work stations to like that simultaneously get them out of the White House's eye, get them off America's plate, and simultaneously seem to enshrine their cause as something that could be temporalized and projected into the future. But that his actual like real intent is to normalize relations with Cuba, and that there's a mismatch here that that somehow results in the JFK assassination. I don't know if I buy it. The reason I say this is an edge case, though, is because this is one of these things where it seems impractical at this point. Well, I say this because we just let 40,000 Haitians just airdrop into fucking Indiana or some shit like that. But it seems implausible to suggest that so much scaffolding is going into building an anti-revolutionary Cuban presence along the Costa Rican shoreline at the same time when we are in fact actually normalizing relations with Cuba. This seems a little incongruent, and I don't really, it doesn't jive with, it doesn't smell right to me.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Although not capable of engineering the strategy of tension by itself, the Cubans were connected to both intelligence and military operatives to provide an enormous from ground up push for an integrated spectacle. This has been footnote. This has been indirectly confirmed by Sam Halpern, a senior aide to Richard Helms, in discussion with investigative journalist Jeff Morley. Halpern relates that in 1963, Desmond Fitzgerald attended a meeting of the NSC on the National Security Council on the Cuba project. At that meeting, National Security Advisor McGeorge Bundy obliquely referring to AM World, remarked that we can give an impression of busyness in Cuba, and we can make little life difficult for Castro. As Halpern remarked to Morley, I'll tell you one thing. I didn't know that word busyness. It was never mentioned by Fitzgerald when he came back from the meeting. And it was a good thing he didn't, because you may have had a 7 days in May at that point.
Again, that's not like, that's tantalizing, but doesn't actually tell us anything.
Yeah. In the words of Enrique Baloira, a charter member of the DRE, there is a certain psychology involved in all this business, a psychology shared by groups like Alpha 66. The basic assumption these people make is that you can't trust the Yankees, so you have to operate in the shadows and totally disconnect yourselves from any American agency. Their philosophy was, we are not going to follow what you tell us to do. What is sensible for you is not necessarily sensible for us.
I just would also take this moment to like come clean that I am like, I have partisan feelings in this sort of cowboy Yankee war.
Feelings.
Yeah, I have it's a rare moment for me to have positionality, but like I am like when people are always trying to get to the bottom of what the fuck is Sandbatchism, I am a cowboy supremacist in this sort of internal WASP war. Like I am like fully on the side of the Cowboys at all times. Speaking of which, we are about to introduce Prince Hamlet, the sensitive young man himself.
That's right. The anti-Castro people put Oswald together. Oswald didn't know who he was who he was working for. He was just ignorant of who was really putting him together. John Martino of Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald is quintessential parapolitical nomad, the chaotic bearer of multiple covert identities while moving across parallel clandestine spaces. It is virtually certain that Oswald was either a paid FBI informant and infiltrator or a CIA asset. In espionage parlance, Oswald might be best described as a dangle, that is, an individual who is circulated among potential intelligence targets strictly to see who responds to or contacts him and to determine their connections. In December 1962, the FBI initiated operations AM Santa. By the way, that's what Sandbatch is, probably.
Yeah, I'm a dangle. I've come to this conclusion independently.
In December 1962, the FBI initiated Operation AM Santa in conjunction with the CIA in order to develop intelligence on Castro assets. The FBI was clearly using credible civilians as having the appearance and other attributes for the role of a pro-Castro revolutionary to penetrate pro-Castro organizations. Dangling hard. Let's see. Sandbatch, talk about something.
The concept of the dangle.
Yeah, do it.
Wilson immediately sort of came out for us and like said the thing that I said, that we call him with this idea of the parapolitical nomad, with moving across multiple parallel clandestine spaces. The idea of a dangle works in a very narrow sense, but we have too much evidence, in my opinion. So he may be operating as a dangle here in this particular situation, but Wilson may be downplaying the extent to which Oswald is actually involved in other things. So, like, one of the things to keep in mind is that, like I said, the New Orleans office of the CIA they're at the same time they're running these operations. They're also running parallel operations. And there's limited amount of evidence, for instance, that Oswald was involved in the clandestine virus research lab at Tulane University, and that he's doing a number of other things. So is he a dangle? Okay. Is he a dangle? Is he a partial dangle? Is he actually a full-blown dangle? Does he not have any idea what the hell is going on? It's possible to assume that he is, on one hand, playing a key agentic role in a particular CIA operation, and also, without his knowledge, operating as a dangle in another. Okay, these guys did not have just one project on their portfolio at any given time. And this is one of the things that I think, like the Wilsons of the world and the parapoliticians, don't necessarily always account for. And I don't blame them, because I actually have a theory that your IQ actually has to be above a certain threshold before you can even countenance keeping this kind of narrative multiplicity alive at once in your head without going totally nuts. Or you
just have to be a certain kind of nuts.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes parapolitical narratives lean to me a little bit linear. They say even the things they debunk, they think they debunk them in a linear way. The things they string together, they do them in a linear way. Whenever you have to realize, we have to take this principle from calculus. So, if you're taking the integral in calculus, you are, calculating the area under a curve. But we can also do this fucking thing where we can actually rotate that curve along an axis and produce a three-dimensional space. So if you imagine that each one of these individual integrals is like a particular narrative, that multi-temporality, multi-narrativity indicates that we could potentially rotate that narrative and get a three-dimensional shape, and each individual possible slice of it is a possible overlapping cotemporality. And this is a very difficult concept to understand, and it does. And I've actually even theorized before that the linear nature of the book itself, book as technology, is actually limiting with respect to conveying some of these concepts, because the book has to be read left to right
in a certain way. Yeah.
And I it's one of these things where I think it's actually a narrative technology bootleg, the bottleneck in some senses of the word.
Let's see.
Sandbatch, talk about something. Did I entertain? Was that satisfying?
Yep. Sorry, I had to re-up a beverage. My throat's getting a little hoarse. The crucial element still in dispute is whether he was the lone gunman of the Warren Commission or the patsy that he very publicly proclaimed himself to be. An action that very much violated the stereotypical notion of the presidential assassin as self-aggrandizing egomaniac. As liberal historian Lawrence Friedman has argued, the Lawrence Friedman I know was the head of the Foundation for Economic Education. That's Lawrence Reed. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Anyway, whether Kennedy was killed by a lone assassin or as a result of the complex plots involving the mob and Cuban exiles that are explained by conspiracy theorists, one way or another, he was probably the victim of the Cuban issue in American politics. Footnote, this seems to have been Robert Kennedy's own early understanding of Dealey Plaza. In December 1963, in yet another striking example of Kennedy back-channeling, RFK dispatched family confidant William Walton to Moscow to deliver a private message to the Soviet government. One, that RFK did not consider the assassination to have been a Russian plot, and two, that the Kennedy family believed that the former president had been the victim of a domestic right-wing conspiracy. In Walton's own words, Dallas was the ideal location for such a crime. Perhaps there was only one assassin, but he did not act alone.
Interesting.
That is by far the most the average case for any assassination is that there's one assassination. There's one assassin who does not act alone. Right. That is the average case. I will demonstrate that these are not mutually exclusive alternatives, as is evidenced by much recent work on JFK Dallas. David Kaiser situates Oswald within a vast right-wing conspiratorial coalition of CIA officers and anti-Castro Cubans, while fingering him as the lone trigger man. Conversely, Russo embeds Oswald within a blowback pro-Castro assassination plot, a paid assassin, but lone gunman of the Cuban secret services. And there is a beefy fucking footnote right here. 1 second. All right. It is important to note that Russo fails to adequately consider an alternative reading that is clearly suggested by his own narrative, that the apparently pro-Castro recruiters of Oswald were in fact anti-Castro double agents seeking to implicate Castro in JFK Dallas so as to precipitate a U.S. military invasion. To complicate matters even further, Oswald as spectacle raises the possibility of Leon as a double patsy. This scenario was laid out with remarkable precision by two of the staff attorneys of the Warren Commission, W. David Slauson and William Coleman. The evidence here could lead to anti-Castro involvement in the assassination on some sort of basis is this. Oswald could have become known to the Cubans as being strongly pro-Castro, with the possibility, of course, of Oswald as a dangle. He made no secret of his sympathies, so the anti-Castro Cubans must have realized that law enforcement authorities were also aware of Oswald's feelings and that, therefore, if he got into trouble, the public would also learn of them. It is possible that some sort of deception was used to encourage Oswald to kill the president. The motive of this would, of course, be expectation that after the president was killed, Oswald would be caught, or at least his identity ascertained. The law enforcement authorities and the public would blame the assassination on the Castro government and call for its forceful overthrow. Would be irresistible.
Wait, but hold on. I'm going to interject here because this what we've done here is we're presenting Oswald as a dangle. Okay, this is our initial framing here. But the narrative that we just heard makes it difficult to read Oswald as a dangle because it implies that Oswald or someone probably.
Well, you did. Okay, so here's the thing.
Someone recognizably Lee Oswald is presenting himself as this character Leon, who doesn't have a given last name, by the way. But Leon, the idea that Leon is a character who is meant to be discussed is a sheep-dipped pro-Castro double agent fits this narrative considerably.
The problem
with
Leon is that actually, like, and no one ever mentions this, but we know Leon from Sylvia Odio's testimony. It's entirely possible she just like didn't realize his name was Lee. I literally Sylvia Odio did not speak excellent English.
Right. Yeah.
She couldn't have just thought it was Leon.
Yeah, no, this is totally true. But I mean, I would point out that the idea of the narrative that's being laid out for us makes considerably more sense if, rather than a dangle, Oswald is agentically participating in the construction of a persona similar to him as a dangle. Okay, and so he's not as innocent. He's not as just careening around the world as he's initially participates. Like I said, Oswald is a kind of small timer. This would be the kind of thing that's just sort of continuously on his docket, just doing little small, like going to some very small.
Here's something that no one ever mentions about Lee Harvey Oswald, which I think is one of the most suspicious connections that he had personally, right prior to 1963. Okay, when he was in the Marines, with Carrie Wendell Thornley. Do you know who Carrie Wendell Thornley is?
No, this one's new for me.
Carrie Wendell Thornley was one of the guys who founded Discordianism.
Interesting.
He wrote the Principia Discordia. Which is semi-satirical, but also the basis of modern chaos magic.
Right. Yeah.
And Kerry Wendell Thornley wrote a book called The Idle Warriors about Lee Harvey Oswald in the late 50s.
Wow.
And there were strange things that occurred after the book was written that ended up coming true. It was not about an assassination of the president. It wasn't that prescient. But it is a crazy crazy artifact. One might say a coincidence,
or coinky dink,
but one might also say that there is a level of potentially functional esotericism that was at play here, and certainly a lot of strange that the same Marine group would produce both Lee Harvey Oswald and Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst, which was Thornley's magical name.
Right. Yeah. So this makes sense, and this is the way the
intelligence also this was known enough for him to have been interviewed by the Warren Commission.
Right.
His interview in the Warren Commission significantly raised his profile in the counterculture that allowed him to further extend the reach when the Principia Discordia was published.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these are things that are just weaving in and out of one another. There's overlapping, quasi multi-dimensional operations. So where if I were to build a narrative out of here, I would say, okay, yeah, Oswald meets this guy. Oh, and these two guys, they're in the Marines. They somehow find their way under the, on inspection day one time. They're walking past the Major Jolyon West, and he singles them out and says, we're going to do something with these two. And this book gets written, and this book, in addition to being a part of some operation that we don't know fuck all about, it also ends up being the basis of Oswald's narrative, because they're remarkably low intel. They're remarkably low for the same reason the Germans were with the Enigma code. They're remarkably low dimensional sometimes, and the instances where you can catch intelligence services at this time being remarkably low dimensional is when they assume that there is so much noise and there are so many archives you would have to get behind, and one single person is nearly incapable of collating all of the information they would need to find that pattern. And if they do somehow do so, we can just label them a conspiracy theorist and move on with it. So they will take remarkable shortcuts sometimes, because these guys are always working, and they're this narrative just gets cooked up while he's at home, frying bacon or something. We'll insert that for this story. And this also ends up being the seed of these multiple parallel operations where okay, yeah, this Oswald thing, this book about this writer that we also sheep dipped, is now all of a sudden we're going to put him in front of the Warren Commission. Now he's going to become a sort of MK Ultra beacon within the counterculture that we're running another operation on,
So I don't necessarily know that the Principia Discordia was directly MK Ultra influenced. I have it's kind of it's kind of a low-key project of mine to try to find the connections between the Discordians and contemporary MK Ultra projects.
Yeah.
And they were definitely kind of in certain milieus, but I'm not aware of any direct associations. So and if I can find them, then it could really help to patch up this sort of psychological technology and psychological technology and esotericism.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to find the connection, and it seems really associated. I mean, we can say, yeah, I mean, Randall Shirker, is like, look into Robert Anton Wilson, one of the major Discordians. Yeah, of course. I mean, I've read everything Robert Anton Wilson ever wrote.
My microphone is sitting on a Robert Anton Wilson book.
Which one?
Psychopolitics. No, it's not Psychopolitics. It's like the psychology one. It's not actually sitting on there anymore. I moved it. It's over there in the corner. I haven't read it. It's been sitting on my bookshelf for like a year and a half, and I haven't read it. Actually, let me get a look. Keep going.
Do the Schrodinger's cat. Some of his deep cuts are actually real fucking bangers, but and Leary definitely had a direct association with some of the labs that did MK Ultra research, but Leary wasn't a Discordian. Like he was a different thing. Like I want to find an association that's better than like dudes who did acid. You know what I mean? So and it's like Leary was, but he also wasn't he was not a Discordian. He wasn't part of the Discordians.
I don't actually have it sitting out, but I did find the Liber Null, so it's sitting right here somewhere. I still have it in my possession. What is the Liber Null?
Libra Null. Oh fuck! I read that one in high school.
Of course.
Sorry. Yeah.
Initiation can never be performed according to some set formula. I'm not reading this right.
Yeah. I mean, that is hard. Let's see. Anyway, Peter Carroll by Chaos. Yeah, Peter Carroll. So that's Chaos Magic. Yeah.
Okay. Of course.
Yeah.
The ritual is the anti-ritual.
Yeah, I like and Peter Carroll is a latter-day guy. The modern day Discordians, they're still operating, and there are people who like were directly initiated by Thornley, right? So they're like the students of the OG guys are still around.
Yeah.
And there are also some millennials millennials and Zoomers who are like who are only third generation in this stuff. Or in some cases second if they're elder millennials.
Yeah.
But you'd think that Discordianism is very trunish now.
I told you what my really weird MK Ultra like sort of totem is.
I thought you had an O. Oh no, go for it.
Well, I was given a dose of LSD by Ken Babbs, and I have like a little silver totem that was made by Owsley Stanley. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting. I don't know that I would take drugs from
Ken Babbs. Oh, he's gonna get the best shit ever.
I mean, I guess that's true.
This would be way cleaner than what you get from Jamal. Sorry, Jamal.
Yeah, he probably did it himself. Sorry, Jamal. What you say about my shit?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Where are we here? JFK Dallas, military invasion, pro-Castro operations. Hancock large
big on Discord.
Yeah, that's right. They're all Discordians now. I actually think that I don't want to get like red yarnish here, but the fact that we have a communication system that is called Discord, like I have to think that the founders of that company are Discordian.
I mean, it's transparently there's some link, even if it's like some like link buried inside irony. Randall Sugar says, "Real talk, I don't get the point of Discordianism. I find it weird. They always pop up in weird glowy circles." There are a couple of ways you can approach this. First of all, you can take my belief, which is that they're literally consorting with demons. But second of all, these like sort of inner, like again, even just that little bit that I read about chaos theory, about
my short I do have a short explanation of this.
Yeah. Go for it.
It's nominally atheistic esotericism.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I mean,
it's nominally atheistic esotericism.
What chaos ritual that even just that sentence that I just read out of the Liber Nullius is that ritual, like the initiation must be done under the auspices of an anti-ritual, which posits that like initiation into chaos must itself like sort of like it has to erase externally visible patterns and is scrub internal patterns as much as possible as well. So what you actually also create with something like chaos magic or Discordian system is a very difficult to crack information transferal system for agents within a particular closed network. So like they can like if you have sufficiently injected enough static into what appears to be their communications from outside, their internal like sort of mode of transferring information to one another is relatively OPSEC. Okay, and so this is another reason the CIA is interested in that sort of thing, because again, the Germans wrote everything down and the Enigma code got cracked.
Let's see. Hancock largely adopts this view, generally following the near-death confessions of Cuban gambling syndicate associate John Martino. Oswald was approached and manipulated by anti-Castro exiles who represented themselves as pro-Castro operatives. At the time he was contacted, Oswald was being run in a counterintelligence operation by U.S. government agency, without a doubt, the FBI, but possibly a part of a joint agency operation, AM Santa. The obvious problem with Martino as a source is that he first gained notoriety in conspiracy circles in 1963 by claiming that Oswald had been recruited by Castro, a line of disinformation fully consistent with that taken by his very senior associate, John Roselli, for a recent attempt to recycle the Castro did it theory, see Littell in general. The author's career included a stint as CIA desk analyst, a national intelligence agency officer for Latin America in the early 1960s, and from 1994 to 1998, director of the Center for the Study of Intelligence. Much of the author's information concerning Oswald as a Cuban agent comes from the testimony of Florentino Aspilgia, a defector from DGI. If someone is former intelligence, they are current intelligence.
Yeah.
Nothing says I am employed in an intelligence agency more than saying I am formerly employed by an intelligence agency.
Yeah.
My own purpose in this essay is to argue for a minimalist theory of the assassination that is wholly explicable within the Debordian terms of the false flag spectacle. It is therefore possible to show that very little would have been required for the integrated spectacle of Dealey Plaza to have been successfully staged, including the possibility of Oswald as the sole shooter. I should also point out that this scenario is also fully compatible with the accidental discharge theory that has undergone a recent revival. The JFK's fatal head wound was the result of an accidental firing of a semi-automatic weapon by a Secret Serviceman, possibly Kennedy favorite Clint Hill, reacting in panic to the ambush of Dealey Plaza. That sounds retarded.
There's a lot of retarded going on here, and this is why people like fucking Wilson.
You can see him turn and shoot. Yeah.
This is why the Wilsons of the world piss me off, and I love the Wendys of the world, because say what you will about Wendy painting, she took a position and like did an incredible job of narrowing the possibility of like what the claim she could be making is here, and I think this idea of constructing a minimal scaffolding, this sort of like, and like including the possibility that Oswald acted on his own within the as a possible assumption of the Debordian spectacle, actually severely weakens your ability to make the Debordian spectacle argument in the first place, and you're actually much better off just going ahead and copping to not believing that the lone wolf shooter theory is possible. You have a much better scholastic thesis if you say, I am telling you right now, there's no way in hell this dude acted alone. So we can actually remove a lot of unknown knowns.
I should point out that this scenario is actually not fucking compatible with the accidental discharge theory.
Yeah.
like his whole thing is that the
spectacle was an accident. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, it is very reasonable to say things like to parapolitically say that like crises do not get wasted, right? And that, you know, if a thing occurs that it has not even been guided, people will attempt to cash in on it. Obviously, we can see that that is the case with even a second of thought about the way that various groups tried to profit off of the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Right.
2 weeks ago.
So here, look, let me give you, go ahead.
But hold on. Like, and so but saying that, right, saying that the spectacle attempts to be managed is literally just like, you're just saying that the theory is not falsifiable, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that wouldn't mean that it was a false flag. It would mean that they didn't want to blame the Secret Service agent, so they found some random jackass who had communist sympathies who happened to be working in an adjacent building and pinned it on him. That is a retarded explanation.
So like, look, let me do this for you too, because this is where like the book as object starts to become interesting. And I see some of the people like in the alt-lit sphere that like to write about the book as object. But whenever we really talk about the book as object, we're not talking about your ability to go like make a cool cover and sell copies. This is what we're talking about in terms of book as object. So the constraints of the book. So like Wilson has done this. He's made certain decisions here. One of the scenarios he's chosen to account for is the possibility that Oswald is a lone shooter. What this does is increase uncertainty further up the further up the inference chain. Whereas now, instead of if we go ahead and make the assumption that Oswald is not a lone shooter and that we don't spend time in our fucking book like because significant portions of the last 10 pages or so have been setting up a narrative in which it is totally possible that Lee Harvey Oswald is acting alone or as a patsy without even really understanding, not even that he's acting alone in general, or that he's the lone shooter. What this does is that it allows us to insert this up-chain narrative of the vast network of right-wing agents throughout the country, without devoting any portion of the book to explaining why that might be the case or who might want those people there or what their aims are. Okay. And so it by giving too much in terms of argument and narrative construction, by giving too much space to the possibility of Lee Harvey Oswald as a lone shooter, we're allowing ourselves to introduce uncertainty further up the chain that might be politically expedient for readers of this particular book. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right. We're right at time, so I'm going to finish this section and then we're going to cut. All right. If both JFK and RFK were as badly alienated from their own government as some of the evidence shows, then a very small number of middle or even low-level operatives could have staged Dealey Plaza. What was essential is that no one within the diverse and overlapping clandestine entities acted to serve as a braking mechanism upon the project. Far more important than the exact mechanics of the assassination, then, is the political logic of the killings as public theater, coupled with the absolutely minimal operational requirements for its physical execution, rendering the notion of a conspiracy to kill JFK genuinely plausible, or at the very least, not inherently implausible. Section 5.03 of the U.S. Penal Code provides the following definition of a criminal conspiracy. And we'll just start there next time.
Yeah, it works.
So, yeah, it's what Wilson has done here is laid out that where he has succeeded, right, is stating that, you know, there are various motives that are overlapping We see that there is, for no pun intended, there is discord within the groups who have the capability of carrying this out. And thus, it is not, in fact, implausible on its face that such a thing could occur, or the goal of, changing the political climate such that an invasion of Cuba becomes the result. So, and I mean, all of that is very reasonable, and I feel is adequately demonstrated by what he has provided in terms of, ancillary things like, this would still work if a CIA agent negligently discharged his firearm. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. So yeah. Sandbatch, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been doing much because I'm fighting with typesetting. You know who's become my hero of late? Fucking 20 gauge shotgun over at Far 7, because he does incredible amounts of types. He does incredible work at typesetting, and it's a much more complicated art than it initially appears to be. So I haven't been doing much. I've got some stuff that I'm going to have up on the Substack in the next day or two, just to remind people that I'm alive, because this is the only thing I've really been doing. And so I don't really have much to show right now, but it's all coming, because I'm just going to stop shilling. I'm going to stop giving myself deadlines that I don't think I'm going to hit. Yeah, stuff's coming, but I got nothing for you right now.
Well, you can catch me every Wednesday on Drive Time Movie Night. You can also catch me over on the Sidebar Podcast, also on the Tookies Mag YouTube channel. We are about to release another episode on, tomorrow at the time of this recording, but it will be out if you are listening to this later. We have a brand new episode on minstrelsy, so check that out. We will see you next time on Library of Mass Destruction.
You're discouraged from questioning and thinking critically. You must accept the word of the leaders. They make you feel guilty if you do question or argue. Your environment is often controlled, cutting you off from friends, family, school, previously held beliefs. They want you to become dependent, provide a poor diet, poor health care, little sleep, and long exhausting hours of work to make you physically weak and lower your ability to think clearly. Subtly, your self-confidence gets undermined, and your self-image or sense of identity is changed. The leaders control channels of communication. They cut off or put down outside sources of information. Then they bombard you with what they want you to think. They use strong peer pressure, playing on your desire to be loved and accepted. The leaders may promise rewards if you obey them, and punishment if you don't, but they alternate harshness and leniency in order to confuse you. The leaders manipulate language, giving special meanings to words that only insiders understand. This is to make you feel like you're part of a special, important, or elite group, and that outsiders are inferior, dangerous, or doomed. You have to confess your shortcomings, mistakes, or misbehavior, sometimes even if these things never really happened. And meanwhile, your time and activities are tightly controlled. You don't have much privacy or energy or time to think because you're too busy doing monotonous, repetitive tasks. The leaders try to control you and even your sexuality, everything about you. They want to exploit you for their own enrichment, their own power or grandiosity. If they succeed, you will declare your loyalty to its leaders, rejecting your old values and way of life. Without realizing it, you will have been changed into a person who is being controlled by a totalist cult.